So hey guys. Welcome back to my channel. Today we're gonna see, instead of Uzumaki, what if Naruto was a full-blooded Uchiha. And this fanfic will be totally different from another fanfic that talked about what if Naruto had Uchiha bloodline, and 100% you guys gonna love this fanfic, so just relax and put your headset for better experience. But before we start, please do like, and don't forget to use the 1000 years of death jutsu on the subscribe button. Now let's start the story. Considered an orphan by the village, but it was not so. Minato was forced to hide his heritage from everyone due to the fact that his father was the great Madara Uchiha, former leader of the Uchiha clan, and thought to be killed by the Shodaime Hokage, Hashirama Senju. Madara survived the battle, however, and stumbled through the forest for hours, almost succumbing to his injuries when he was found by a young woman with blue eyes and long blonde waist-length hair. The woman took him to her home and nursed him back to health. After 4 days Madara woke up, still injured, and looked around only to find himself in a strange room on a bed with his torso and arms wrapped up in bandages. Attempting to get off the bed, he was stopped when a moan was heard. Turning to where the sound came from, he was greeted with the most beautiful woman he had ever seen. Her sunlight blonde hair and her sapphire eyes that portrayed deep emotions with a hint of mischief in them. She wore a plain pink kimono that hung to the curves, and she walked with a grace that can only be found from noble clans Kunoichi. Blinking away his momentary daze, he asked, "Where am I? You were extremely hurt and on the verge of death when I found you, and then I brought you here and took care of you," the woman replied. "Thank you. Who are you?" inquired the former Uchiha leader. "I am Miyamikaze," to which he replied, "I am Madara Uchiha, former leader of the Uchiha clan." After a month and a half of recovery, Madara noticed his wounds were too deep and he would never again attain the level of power he possessed during his fight against Hashirama. Continuing to stay at the woman's home, he discovered that she was from the Namikaze clan, a small clan from during the Warring Clans era, but left when she was quite young due to her dislike of the violence occurring. She was a kind, gentle person with some knowledge of the shinobi arts. Days turned into months, and Madara found himself falling in love with his savior, and after 2 years he married her and had a son. This boy was Minato Namikaze. 6 years later Minato activated his Sharingan bloodline inherited from his father. Somehow Kumo caught wind of Madara's survival, and his new family and 5 Anbu squadrons were sent to kill him and get his son, so Kumo can gain the Sharingan. They ambushed the house while Madara was out and killed his wife as she protected her son. Returning home to this side enraged Madara, and he quickly engaged the enemy. Although he was injured and wouldn't reach his former peak power, Madara was still not one to be trifled with. He quickly dealt with most of the squadron, but was stabbed by a poisoned katana from behind. Swiftly ending this shinobi's life and then using his Susanoo to deal with the remainder, Madara went inside his house where he saw his wife on the floor in a pool of her own blood. Making his way towards her, he found her barely alive where she gave him one last kiss and told him to take care of their son. Watching as the life left her eyes, he screamed in rage, but soon calmed down enough for him to use his sensory abilities to find his son. Sliding the door to the back house open, he saw his son curled up in a ball and sobbing. Walking up, he hugged his boy as he sobbed uncontrollably. He picked up his son and put him in the bed and began to write a letter. Afterwards, he used a scroll to seal up some money, clothes, basic ninja equipment like kunai and shuriken, and various jutsu scrolls that he owned. As he finished, Minato walked in and was told to get prepared to leave. After burying their wife-mother, the father-son duo jumped through the trees towards Konoha, the village that Madara had helped found. As they reached closer to the gates, Madara stopped. Seeing this, Minato stopped as well. Passing the scrolls to his son and getting a confused stare in return, Madara sighed. Looking towards his son, he started, "My son, you have to go to the village on your own, and from now on I will no longer be with you, because I have many enemies, and now that they know I am alive they will not rest, and that will put you in too much danger. Go make yourself a great shinobi worthy of your peers and make me and your mother proud." With tears in his eyes, Minato jumped into his father's arms, embracing him for what would be the final time. Telling his son to give the letter to Tobirama Senju and that it will explain everything and to never tell anyone who his father was, Madara looked on as his son walked through the gates and a tear escaped his eye as he gazed up and said to no one in particular, "Sorry my boy, but this will be the last time we meet as I will succumb to my injuries soon and join your mother. Forgive me." End of flashback. Outside the walls of Konoha, a newborn baby's cries were heard as Minato Namikaze gazed at his newborn son, who was in the arms of one of the midwives. Suddenly, the midwife holding the baby fell over dead, and a strange masked man had his son in his arms with a kunai at each throat of the newborn. "Step away from the Jinchuriki or your son's first hour will be his last." "Whoa, calm down," said Minato, to which the man replied that he was completely calm. He then threw the baby into the air and used the weapon in his hand to stab him. Reacting quickly, Minato jumped up and saved his son and noticed explosive tags on the blanket which he immediately threw away and teleported away to one of his Hiraishin kunai located outside as the blast occurred. The level in chakra was soon felt throughout the town as the Kyuubi appeared in the middle of the village. After the Kyuubi was extracted and tried to kill Kushina, Minato appeared and saved her. "You truly live up to your moniker Kiroi Senko," said the masked man. Teleporting to where Naruto was, he placed Kushina on the bed next to her son and got prepared for battle. Appearing on his head on the Hokage monument, he noticed the Kyuubi firing off a Bijudama. Swiftly going through the hand signs, he cast his space-time barrier technique, absorbing the attack and then teleporting it away. At this moment, the masked man appeared and tried to absorb him into somewhere, but Minato quickly teleported out of that location. Appearing in a swirl, the two warriors fought, which ended in the masked man's retreat when he was hit with a Rasengan in the back after having control of the Kyuubi ripped from him via contract seal. Looking around and realizing that the mighty beast needed to be sealed again, Minato flashed to Kushina and took both her and Naruto out to where the Kyuubi is. Preparing the sealing ritual, Minato sealed the full Kyuubi into Naruto with the Shinigami's help. Exhausted and knowing he was going to die along with his wife, he looked to the Sandaime, who had just entered after Kushina dropped the barrier, and asked for scrolls to write their last words. Giving the letters to Sarutobi with instructions to give the letters to Naruto on his 5th birthday and asked him to take care of his son and have the villagers see him as a hero. Promising to do as told, Sarutobi looked on as both Minato and Kushina took their last breaths before taking Naruto from Kushina's arms and going back to the village. And so begins Naruto's story. 4 years later. Konoha. A young red-headed boy can be seen sitting on a bed inside the orphanage looking at the window with sad eyes. His stomach rumbled because he received no dinner today. This was nothing unusual for the boy, as the matron would rebuke him for arriving 5 minutes late to the orphanage and he would be punished by not getting dinner. Even when he got dinner, it would just be leftover food. He was not allowed to play with the other children from the orphanage and the villagers would keep their children away from him and tell them that he is a bad child. A tear ran down his cheek as he tried to figure out exactly what it was he did to deserve such treatment. Only one old man came to visit him regularly and he had made friends with the 2 workers at the ramen shop. When he asked the old man why was he treated the way he was, all he got was a sad look and then the old man would tell him to give the people a chance and time to get to know him better. Naruto noticed that the villagers would give the old man respect and looks of admiration when he walked down the street. Upon inquiring the reason why, the old man told him that he was the Hokage and the strongest ninja in the village. Looking towards the old man, he asked what makes him so strong. Taking him to the top of the Hokage mountain, more specifically on the head of the Yondaime Hokage, the old man replied, "Once my sensei brought me up here and I asked the same question you did. Naruto-kun, he said to me that the village is like a tree, the people are the branches, and the Hokage is like the stem that must remain strong and protect itself from the winds. This protection urge brings forth true strength." Hiruzen watched as Naruto sat down reviewing what he was just told while gazing out towards the village, and his eyes burned in determination, and a thought came to mind: the will of fire burns brightly in you, my boy. Taking Naruto back to the orphanage, Hiruzen got him some books to learn to read and write and about the leaf's history. Late at night, Naruto read about the story of the Yondaime Hokage and decided he will surpass him, unaware that said Hokage was his father. He drifted off to sleep with a soft smile on his face. He awoke early the next morning, had breakfast and was excited to train a little. He recalled reading in a book yesterday that shinobi had to train differently as they would build their bodies from an early age to suit various attributes such as speed, strength, agility, etc. Naruto decided that since he has a flexible body, he would train his body to be a quick shinobi. So he began his regiment of doing 5 laps, a few sit-ups and push-ups. When that was over, he sat at the tree and practiced his reading and writing skills. When he was finished, he saw that it was already lunchtime and after he had to be under the matron's constant clock. For a few months this routine continued. Training till lunch, then relaxing and working on his reading and writing while his body rested. While reading one day he came across the concept of chakra. The book gave detailed instructions on what chakra is and how to unlock it. Following the instructions, he sat down and meditated. Feeling inside himself for the warm feeling, he found it difficult to find. After half an hour of trying, he was beginning to give up when suddenly he felt a fuzzy feeling in his stomach and began to pull on it. An explosion of blue energy surrounded him as Naruto sat there mesmerized by said energy. After a couple minutes the energy began to dissipate and Naruto started to feel exhausted and fell asleep under the tree. The day after he started to read further into the chakra book and found that the first thing to learn is how to control said chakra. He also read about hand signs but decided to work on his control for now. Seeing the first exercise is the leaf sticking exercise, he began to practice it. Time skip 1 year. During the last year, Naruto grew a lot. He became quite fast and agile for someone of his age and had exceeded some academy students who were in their final year. He practiced the leaf balancing and could now hold up to 5 leaves on his forehead and 1 each on his arms and legs. He also found that he could sense when others were near him and upon investigating it found that he was in fact a sensor. Once he placed 2 fingers on the ground and found someone nearby in the trees. This continued for 2 days and when he confronted the stranger, he found an Anbu agent with a dog mask. Looking at the Anbu, Naruto asked why was he following him, to which the agent simply said that he was protecting him. Nodding at the response but internally confused as to why he needed protection, Naruto just shrugged and accepted. During the months that followed, Naruto and Inu became good friends, even though Inu would not tell Naruto his name, much to the Riti's chagrin. Inu taught Naruto the henge and kawarimi. Naruto was overjoyed and henged into a plain-looking child and went into the village and noticed that people were treating him with kindness. This made him sad and a little angry that it was only him that was treated in a negative way, while everyone else seemed to get proper treatment. With this knowledge he started to shop with a henge, and this solved the issue of overly priced goods that were not of the best quality. Inu taught him how to use kunai and shuriken, but he was not allowed to own any because he was still very young. He was elated however when he got a kunai holster, a utility bag and a practice set of kunai and shuriken from the old man for his birthday. 2 days later, the villagers were still in a party mode, but he did not join in the festivities as he saw that they were hostile to him. So he was in one of the unused training grounds when he felt someone moving quickly around the festival and towards the village walls. This presence he felt was not a familiar one, and he could sense the negative emotions. Naruto discovered he could sense people's emotions as well, radiating from the person. There was also another individual present who had emotions of fear and sadness. Deciding to investigate, he took the shortest route to where he predicted the presence would be passing. Upon arriving, he was met with the sight of a man with a Kumo hit I-8, with a bag slung over his shoulder moving. Taking 3 shuriken in one hand and 3 kunai in the other, he threw it at the foreign ninja. Said ninja noticed at the last moment and leapt away. Seeing as there was no other option, Naruto came out to confront the man. The Jounin saw that it was just a 5-year-old boy with red hair and sapphire blue eyes that made him look away. He looked to the boy in front of him and said, "Oi brat, get out of my way, and maybe I'll let you live." "Let the person inside the bag go and I'll leave," replied Naruto. At this the Kumo-nin laughed and replied, "Do you think a child like you can do anything? I am a Jounin and you cannot hope to defeat me." Not taking his eyes off the man, Naruto thought to himself, I can't beat him, but I can stall him long enough for another ninja to get the bag. Seeing as the boy isn't going to budge, the Kumo Jounin's face twisted to a sneer and pulled out some shuriken and tossed them at Naruto. Dodging the projectiles by stretching out of the way, Naruto jumped and kicked the man over his head, but he was blocked with the free arm of the foreigner. Quickly backflipping, Naruto avoided a counter-attack. Taking out some more shuriken and throwing them at the man, but they were deflected by the Jounin using a kunai. Becoming more frustrated and agitated as he knew soon the Anbu would be here, the Kumo-nin placed the bag on the floor and threw the kunai made Hamsons and shouted ninja art, Shadow Kunai Jutsu. This scared the young Ritiid as he knew that he had no time to get away. Seeing the kunai coming closer, the man knew it was over. All of a sudden, everything started slowing down for Naruto, and he could now see the kunai more clearly as his vision sharpened. Twisting out of the kunai's way, he threw shuriken at the man who, not expecting the attack, was hit on the leg, and he howled in agony. This only served to enrage the Jounin more as he flew through hand signs and shouted fire style. Fireball Jutsu. Having no time to dodge, Naruto just thought it was over and closed his eyes. The Kumo-nin smirked as he knew there was no way the boy could avoid him. Looking towards where the boy was, all he saw was a burnt area, but no sign of the boy. Widening his eyes as he felt blows feeling like he had been hit from the inside out, he heard a voice shout, "A trigram 64 palms." Turning around, he was met with the face of the Hyuga clan head Hiashi Hyuga, with a murderous look on his face. Behind him was Inu with Naruto on his shoulder and 3 Anbu circling him. The Kumo-nin fell unconscious, and Hiashi walked towards the bag where he found his older daughter tied up inside. Swiftly cutting her loose, the girl immediately latched onto him and sobbed her eyes out. Breathing a sigh of relief, Hiashi comforted his daughter and closed his eyes. The Hokage along with 4 of his personal Anbu then arrived onto the scene and looked around. He saw Hiashi hugging his sobbing daughter and looked towards Inu who had Naruto in his arms unaware of the bleeding. Narrowing his eyes at the Anbu and showing exactly why he was known as the god of shinobi, who had seen 3 wars and led his people through 2 of them, with a cold voice he said, "Report." Stepping forward, Inu said Hokage-sama tonight the Hyuga heir, Hinata, was kidnapped from her room in the Hyuga compound by the Kumo ambassador, who arrived with their delegation for the peace treaty talks, when he was intercepted and stalled by young Naruto. Both the Hyuga clan and myself owes Naruto-sen a debt and shall visit when he wakes up, came the stoic reply from Hiashi, after which he turned and walked back towards his home with his daughter now sleeping in his arms. I'm getting too old for this shit, thought Hiruzen as he gazed upon Naruto with a proud smile on his visage, before turning around to return to the Hokage Tower to continue his battle against the greatest enemy he has ever faced. Paperwork. Konoha. Council Chamber. Inside the council chambers, a meeting was in session. For today was the day the Raikage would be visiting to finalize the peace treaty talks. The Hokage sat in front of everyone with Koharu to his left and Hamura to his right. Beside Koharu sat the members of the Shinobi Council, which comprised the clan heads Inoichi Yamanaka, Choza Akimichi, Shikaku Nara, Tsu Minyazuka, Fugaku Uchiha, Shibi Abiram, Hiashi Hyuga and Iji Kurama. To the side of Hamura sat the elder Danzo and the civilian council consisting of Mibuki Haruno and some of the wealthy merchants in the village. The council was in an uproar with the civilians calling for the treaty to be nullified, while the shinobi side were calling for the execution of the Kumo Jounin and breakage of the treaty. Having enough, Sarutobi released some kai and shouted silence. At this, the entire room became silent as the Hokage sighed and began to speak. On half an hour the Raikage will be here, and we are gathered here ahead of time to discuss, not make decisions. Besides, the civilian side has no right to speak as they have no say in shinobi affairs, which this event was. The entire shinobi side nodded their heads as the civilian side remained silent and steamed, knowing that the Hokage was right. Soon the time came when the door opened and in walked the Raikage with his guards and sat down in front of the council. In a polite tone, the Hokage said, "I hope that the journey was comfortable, Raikage Dono." At this, the Raikage responded arrogantly, "The journey here was fine. Can we move on to the talks?" Nodding to the Kumo leader, the Hokage responded, "Yes, of course, however there was an issue with the delegation you sent earlier. One of them attempted to kidnap the Hyuga heiress a few nights ago and was intercepted and apprehended. Upon interrogations, the rest of the delegation were arrested and testimonies recorded and memory checked by Inoichi Yamanaka. The details are in this file." Snapping his fingers, an Anbu appeared and placed the file in front of the Raikage. The Raikage opened the file and gritted his teeth as his shinobi had stated that the orders had come from him. Now, as a result, all expenses were being taken into account for these talks. The talks continues where Kumo was forced to give up a percentage of their missions and trade routes and fair compensation to Konoha and the Land of Fire. The clan heads were all satisfied with the treaty as both nations were now neutral with each other. The Kumo Jounin was handed over to his leader and they were escorted to the border, where as soon as crossing into the Land of Lightning, the Raikage had the Jounin executed for failing the mission and then giving up valuable intel. The Hokage was happy that Konoha had more power and respect internationally, and the Byakugan bloodline remained here, all thanks to Naruto. He lit his pipe and smirked as he continued his way to his office to face the dreaded enemy once more. Training grounds. Naruto arrived at the training grounds and opened the scroll to his father's Taijutsu style called the Hummingbird style. The style incorporated flexible movements and fast precise strikes to various pressure points across the body. It also incorporated bits and pieces of the Uchiha's Interceptor Fist style, which involved predicting and reacting to your opponent's moves. It required the user to be fast and flexible and not be bulky like some bodybuilders. Naruto thought this was perfect for him as the style was unpredictable, just like his attitude that matched. He got up and started going through the basic katas, which was finished by lunchtime. He sat down, exhausted as his body needed rest. He took up the other book that he got from his compound and began to read it. He quickly found Fuinjutsu to be intriguing and decided then and there that he would become a Fuinjutsu master. He also read that high-level masters can place seals with their hands and create kanji by using their chakra. The book also stated that Fuinjutsu was only limited by the user's imagination. Time skip 1 year later. A year had passed since Naruto found out his parents' identities and began his training. As soon as he turned 6 years old, he was thrown out of the orphanage as they were not required to keep him there, even though there were older children, some teenagers still living in the orphanage. The Hokage found him after a month and gave him an apartment which Naruto took, as he did not want people to know that he was living in the house of the Yondaime Hokage. When asked if he wanted to join the academy early, Naruto refused as he could continue to train in the years before joining the academy. Thinking that Naruto meant to join in his age group so that he can befriend the others, Sarutobi accepted and told Naruto to meet him tomorrow. The next day came and Naruto got his apartment. It turns out that due to his well-known status, nobody wanted to live in the same place as the demon, so Naruto now owned the entire building. Over the past year, Naruto's training bore results as he had almost mastered the basic katas of the Hummingbird style. He also began to train with his Sharingan until it evolved to a Tutamo state. He couldn't keep it on for long, however, as it took too much chakra, so he began more chakra control exercises, such as tree walking, which he mastered to a degree. His speed and agility increased as well. He could now hit 7 out of 10 targets by moving and started to use ninja wire in his shuriken jutsu. He started learning survival methods and trap making as these were good skills to have. His Fuin jutsu was coming along nicely as he was now about to start level 3 of sealing, but he had to ensure his calligraphy was up to par and required constant practice just like chakra control. The only thing he wasn't able to do was learn Kenjutsu, but he had time for that. In a scroll marked with an Uchiha fan, Naruto saw that it was a fire-style ninjutsu. More specifically, it was the fire-style Great Fireball Jutsu. It took him some time, but he was eventually able to make a fireball, but noticed that his hand seal speed wasn't up to snuff, so he decided that he would master the jutsu to a great degree. Looking up to the sky he smiled and thought about how the coming 2 years would be for him. 1 year later. As another year passed, our favorite Redeed was still in the midst of training. Over the year, he mastered the basics and moved on to the advanced katas of the hummingbird style. This involved more acrobatic motions and being able to step aside quickly and move to counteract. He also fully matured his Sharingan, but never became arrogant and overly relied on it as his father wrote in his diary that many Uchiha became drunk on their own power and it led to their downfall. He had perfected his first jutsu and began to learn the fire style, Dragon Flame Jutsu, which released a narrow stream of fire like a flamethrower. He also decided to try using the Shadow Clone Jutsu as he couldn't use the normal clone technique as, according to his mother's diary, Uzumaki generally has large reserves of chakra and as such cannot usually do Genjutsu or low-level techniques. So he began learning the Shadow Clone Jutsu from his mother's scrolls, which said that the technique was forbidden one due to the chakra requirements, but that was no concern for Naruto. Fuin Jutsu was moving along nicely as he had just began level 4 after endless practice of calligraphy. He also fully mastered tree walking and moved on to water walking as seen in his parents' notes. At first he thought that it was a prank, but upon attempting it, he found it works, and so he worked tirelessly to master it. He eventually was able to fight on the water, and when he performed his ninjutsu, he noticed that it took less chakra and was more powerful than before. The one thing he had craved was friends, but alas, no one in the park would play with him, and the parents kept their children away from him. This was heartbreaking for him, but he decided to just give up for now until the academy starts to see if he can make any friends. He took up pranking as well as he found it to be a form of training where he would evade and outrun his pursuers. The old man never punished him for his pranks as he found it to be good training for his forces as well as using Naruto's pranks to devise new security measures for the village. Training grounds. Present time. As Naruto was going to begin his taijutsu practice, he felt a presence behind him. Throwing some shuriken at the person and taking out 2 kunai and slid into a defensive stance. The mystery person rolled and swerved and stood up facing him. As he laid eyes on the person, he saw that it was a girl who was about 2 years older than him. She had silky raven hair tied in a high ponytail with a black ribbon and dropped down to her waist over her back. She was wearing a white battle kimono shirt with full sleeves with a blue skirt that had cuts on both legs for free movement that was midway to her thigh and had black fishnet stockings under the skirt. Her kunai holster rested on her left leg and her hip bag on her back and black ninja sandals. She had smooth pale white skin that gleamed in the sunlight. He relaxed his posture a little and asked, "Who are you?" He dropped his stance and put away his kunai. At first glance he had to admit that she was one of the most beautiful girls he had ever encountered. She looked at him impassively for a few moments before responding, "Isn't it polite to introduce yourself first?" Blushing from embarrassment, Naruto recalled that Jiji had once said the same thing to him. "My name is Naruto Uzumaki." "And I know yours," said Naruto in a low polite tone. The girl continued to stare at him while taking in his features. He had red hair that was almost like the color of blood which was short but had some over his face hiding his forehead. His sapphire blue eyes was like an endless ocean and showed his nervousness. He had 3 whisker-like marks on either side of his face, which made him look like a fox and a little cute in her opinion. Her eyes trailed to his kunai holster and hip bag before returning to his sapphire ones. "Izumi Uchiha," replied the girl in a melodious monotone voice. They stood there staring at each other as Naruto tried to look everywhere but at her. He had to admit he had never been so unnerved before and he drew on the old man's face while he slept on his paperwork. Attempting to break the silence, he asked the first thing that came to mind, "You a ninja?" At this, Izumi stared at him with the same gaze that made him feel like an idiot. He was broken from his thoughts when she replied, "I am a chunin." He nodded and mused to himself that she must be strong to be a chunin at that age. Hell, some children are not even genin yet at that age. "Are you a ninja?" asked Izumi as she indicated his outfit. Following her gaze, he answered, "I will join the academy next year and I train in preparation for it." "Would you like to spar?" asked Izumi. "Huh?" replied Naruto as he tilted his head to one side. "I asked if you wanted to spar," responded Izumi with a stoic face. Immediately closing his mouth and stuttering out yes, Izumi slid into her stance and said to Jutsu only. Nodding to her, he took his own stance and had to react quickly as she pounced on him, throwing a left jab into his face. Sidestepping her and throwing his own right punch, which was blocked with her free hand and hitting her leg, forcing her to separate. Moving to a defensive stance, Naruto prepared for her next strike. She charged again with a right hand that he attempted to block, but this was merely a distraction as she pushed his hand away and threw a left hook. It connected and momentarily dazed Naruto. Pressing her advantage, she jumped and launched a roundhouse kick to his face, which sent Naruto to the ground. He immediately felt a knee to the back and his arm crossed and felt a metal touching his neck. "Yield," whispered Izumi into his ear slowly, which gave him goosebumps and a shiver down his spine. Nodding, he replied, "I yield." She removed the kunai and stood up off him, re-entering her stance. Naruto stood up, rubbed his cheek and entered his own stance as the two individuals charged again. This continued for some time, each time Naruto landing on his ass. As the sun began to set and they sat down on a tree branch and watched the sunset, she jumped down and began heading out of the training grounds. "Wait," yelled Naruto, and she turned to look at him with her charcoal eyes. "Would you come again tomorrow to train with me?" he asked. She continued to stare at him before raising an eyebrow at him. Noticing this, he looked down and frowned. He should have known she wouldn't want to come again. He was about to turn and leave when her melodic voice cut through. "You are quite good at Taijutsu, so I believe that it will be beneficial to both of us." His eyes widened and he looked at her with a startled expression for a moment before he gave a megawatt smile. Smirking to him, Izumi turned and left the clearing. She laughed at the look on his face. Staring at her retreating form, he had one thought running through his mind: she looks even more beautiful when she laughs. Time skip 1 year. Waking up with a groan, our favorite Retid gazed at the clock. Seeing the time and realizing he had an hour left before the academy started and that today was his first day. He jumped out of bed and ran around getting ready for his day. Standing in front of the mirror, he channeled chakra to his eyes and saw the pride of the Uchiha clan, his inheritance from his father and grandfather, his 3 Tomo Sharingan staring back at him. He was now used to higher level speeds as they had increased after many spars with Izumi. In the first few months she had dominated him even as she held back. Eventually he began to hold his own but was still beaten into the ground. He laughed at the memories of his only friend, not that he understood why or how she became his friend. When he asked about her, she told him that she was the daughter of the clan head of the Uchiha clan. Basically she was a princess in the village because of her status as heiress to a powerful clan, a founding one no less. When she saw he ate mostly ramen, she told him he should eat proper foods. Upon hearing this he asked what was wrong with ramen, and insert spiel of how it is the food of the gods here. She replied with nothing, but if he continued to eat just that he will grow up to be a dwarf. This stopped him in his tracks and let out an outraged hey. And he swore that he saw a satisfied smile on her face. After that, she began bringing 2 bentos each time they sparred. Admittedly she was a great cook. When he voiced this, she informed him that all women in the clan were required to learn to cook, but this was her hobby. His skills also came along quite nicely as he was now a level 5 Fuinjutsu user and decided to begin deciphering the Hiraishin after he finished level 5, as this would take some time to do. He also got help from Izumi and Shuriken Jutsu as she showed him how to change trajectories of the kunai. Bringing a scroll entitled Sharingan Triple Windmill Attack, Izumi raised an eyebrow at the Uchiha emblem on it but made no comment. He was able to master the technique, unlike Izumi. She also taught him to detect and dispel low-level Genjutsus, stating that he had abysmal Genjutsu skills. He could now detect and dispel C-ranked and lower Genjutsus. In ninjutsu, he learned Fire Style, Phoenix Flower Jutsu and Ninja Art, Shadow Shuriken Jutsu. 3 weeks ago was Izumi's birthday. He was ecstatic when she came that day and hugged her almost immediately and treated her to ramen at Ichiraku's. At the restaurant, AM teased him about being sweet to bring her on a date for her birthday. The blood rushed to his face as it lit up like a Christmas tree. If one looked closely, they could see the slight pink on Izumi's cheeks, but she quickly masked it. Afterwards, they went to the training grounds behind the Hokage monument and let loose on the spars. As evening came, she said she had to get back home as they had a party for her. He took out a small package from his hip bag and held it out for her to take. Staring at him impassively, he told her it was for her birthday and her promotion. At this, she hesitantly accepted the gift and opened it. Inside the package was a beautiful silver hair clip with a red gem on the 2 wings shaped to look like a butterfly. She looked at him for a moment with a raised eyebrow to which he squirmed under that gaze. Looking to the floor and shuffling his feet, he avoided her penetrating gaze. About to apologize because he thought she didn't like the gift, he looked up to see that she undid the ribbon and placed the clip in her hair, redoing her high ponytail in the process. Thanking him for the useful gift, she gave a small laugh which made butterflies enter Naruto's stomach. Izumi was extremely happy with the gift as it showed that he cared for her as a friend and not some fanboy. Only her mother and him saw her as a person and not some tool to be used whenever it was convenient and forgotten about afterwards. His attitude was refreshing and took the strain away from her duties. Naruto even saw though her mask, and upon asking, he was told that it was for her father as he demanded that she be this way when representing the Uchiha clan. She even introduced him to her crow summons so that they could send messages to each other when she was out on missions. Although the village dubbed her the Ice Queen and the Untouchable Princess, he knew what she was really like. Shaking his head from his thoughts, he sat down to have breakfast. Looking towards his closet, he saw his orange jumpsuit that he bought recently. When he showed it to Izumi, she asked why did he buy that monstrosity, to which he replied that it made him look stupid. Looking at him with a blank face, she told him he was stupid enough, no need to exaggerate it. Letting out his cries, she smirked knowing it was easy for her to get under his skin. As he got to the academy gates, he spotted Izumi walking towards the gate with her father and little brother, Sasuke Uchiha. Noticing she was looking in his direction, he waved and gave a grin which was responded with her own grin and wave. At this moment, the Hokage came to lecture about the life of a ninja and all that crap. He thought to himself. This is going to be a long 4 years. Konoha Ninja Academy. Sitting in the back of the class while his teacher, Haruka Yamino, and his assistant, Mizuki, were going through what the 4 years at the academy entails was Naruto. Listening carefully, he found that the first year was just some physical conditioning and history of Konoha. The second year would have weapon training and being taught the basic academy Taijutsu style. In their third year, they would be taught advanced katas for the academy Taijutsu style and be introduced to chakra, along with basic chakra control exercises and basic chakra theory. In the fourth and final year, they would go through basic ninjutsu, taught hand seals, and learn the academy 3, Henge, Kawarimi and Bunshin. After this they would take the final exam where they will be placed into a team of 3 with a Jounin sensei. He was greatly disappointed with the curriculum and sighed as he gazed around the class making note of the individuals in his class. He first noticed a blonde girl with a high ponytail and a fringe covering her left eye. She wore purple clothing that looked new with bandages wrapped around her midsection. Her name was Ino Yamanaka, heiress to the Yamanaka clan. Next to her, he noticed a pink-haired girl with a huge forehead. She and Ino were like 2 peas in a pod as they both looked like they never ran a lap in their lives. He noted her name as Sakura Haruno, daughter of the civilian council head Mibukki Haruno. Then he saw a feral-looking boy with a dog on his head. Immediately recognizing him as an Inuzuka, he noted his name as Kiba Inuzuka, younger son of clan head Tsume. Then there was a chubby boy who ate like no tomorrow, but he was a kind person unless he was called fat. His name is Choji Akimichi, heir to the Akimichi clan. Next to Choji is a boy with a pineapple-shaped hairstyle. He was sleeping. He is the Nara heir, Shikamaru. Then he saw the girl he had saved all those years ago. Hinata, here remembered her name was, daughter of Hiashi and heiress to the Hyuga clan. Beside her was a stoic-looking boy wearing a pair of sunglasses. He is Shino Aburam, heir to the Aburam clan. Finally he saw Sasuke sitting in front corner, glaring at the window. He already had fangirls in this class, and his 2 biggest were Ino and Sakura. He had tried to befriend them, but they both scoffed with Ino, saying he wasn't worth her time and Sakura screeching that nobody wanted to be friends with a clanless loser orphan like you, so he gave up on trying to get their friendship. Deciding to use the 4 years to increase and refine his skills, he would also follow the rule that deception is a ninja's greatest tool. Breaking out of his thoughts, he heard the voice of Iruka saying to head outside for weekly Taijutsu spars. He watched with disinterest as most of the class went about their spars. Only Hinata had a good match, but they were restricted to the academy style, otherwise she could have ended it sooner. Ino vs Sakura, came the shout of Mizuki. What followed was a poor display of Taijutsu. Shaking his head and thinking that none of these girls would last 10 seconds with Izumi. Soon the boys' names were being called. One by one the boys had their matches until the last ones were called, Naruto vs Sasuke. Sasuke charged and threw a right punch which was sidestepped. Naruto continued to evade and block Sasuke's strikes which only infuriated the young Uchiha more. Seeing an opening Naruto struck and soon Sasuke was on the floor. Pressing the advantage, Naruto moved to hold him down, but Sasuke was frustrated and threw a handful of sand into Naruto's eyes. Not expecting a cheap trick like that, Naruto was then hit twice and received a kick to the chest which resulted in the match being called in Sasuke's favor. Saying nothing, Naruto walked off to wash off the sand from his eyes, only telling Iruka he was heading to the infirmary. Few minutes before. Izumi had just finished her mission and was heading to the academy so that she could train with Naruto. She saw the entire match and was disgusted at her brother's attitude. Seeing Naruto walk off, she followed him and saw him punch the wall in frustration. "Hey," she called. Turning around, Naruto saw her and asked why she was there, to which she responded she was waiting for the academy to be over so that they could go train. "I saw the match, I feel for my brother's folly," said Izumi in her monotone voice. "No need for you to apologize, it was not your actions," responded Naruto. Nodding to him, they both left to the roof where they watched everyone leave. They leapt to their usual training grounds and trained till the sun went down, had some food and walked the streets before coming to a fork where they separated. "Good night, Izumi," stated Naruto. "Good night, Naruto," replied Izumi as she walked towards the Uchiha compound while Naruto walked towards his home. Time skipped 2 years. Konoha. The village was as peaceful as ever and people were going about their business as usual. In the past 2 years, our favorite Riti trained extensively in the hummingbird style, which he almost mastered perfectly. At this point, he could go toe-to-toe with Izumi when she matched his speed. His movements were very acrobatic and flexible, and his counters and dances became unpredictable, just as his father's scroll said. He practiced the basic jutsus henge and kawarimi until he could do them without hand seals. He has now finished level 5 in his Fuinjutsu and has mastered many new seals, such as blood and chakra recognition seals, security seals and some barrier seals as well. He further increased control of his ever-growing chakra reserves and mastered waterfall walking, which took some time, but the results speak for themselves. He was just beginning to learn his father's restriction seals so that he could condition his body to use the Hiraishin. He was also going to begin deciphering the technique itself and just knew that it would take a lot of work and time. He started his elemental manipulation training to master his previously learned jutsus completely. Izumi got him a slip of chakra paper and told him to channel chakra into it so that they could know his affinities. She demonstrated for him first, explaining that the paper reacts differently to each chakra nature. If the paper burns, fire affinity; if it gets soggy, water affinity; if it splits, wind affinity; if it turns to dust or crumbles, earth affinity; if it crinkles or shrivels up, lightning affinity. When Izumi pushed chakra into the paper, half of it burned and the other half got soggy, meaning she had a dual affinity to fire and water. Motioning for Naruto to channel his chakra into the slip of paper, the results made her go wide-eyed for a moment. The paper split into 3 pieces. The first one crinkled up severely, the second piece caught fire, and the third piece became soggy. Getting out of her stupor, Izumi explained that Naruto had 4 affinities: wind, lightning, fire and water. Excited by this, Naruto asked her how he would do elemental manipulation training. To this, she gave him a thick stick in his hands. Staring at her for a moment, she told him to make it hot and then make it ignite by channeling fire chakra into it. After this, he took the stick daily to the academy to practice, especially during the theoretical lectures, which was boring. Upon completion, he asked if she knew of any others and she showed him the first step to water manipulation, making the water spin using only his chakra. She also showed him the second level to fire manipulation, which was to superheat a rock until it destabilized and changed shape. This was something he found difficult and was not making any headway, but he did not give up. For the last 2 years, he was the dead last as he was always given different test papers and only managed to barely pass as he read some of his parents' library. He also hid most of his skills to not arouse any suspicion. His pranks evolved as well as they were now more elaborate and on a larger scale than before. The old man complained that he increased the strength of his greatest enemy to date, paperwork. He also managed to make some friends in Shikamaru, Choji and Kiba. Izumi got an Anbu invitation letter a few weeks ago. Upon learning of this, he was ecstatic for his friend and took her to her favorite sushi place in celebration. When she asked him for his suggestion on what should she do, he told her to follow her heart and only join if she could handle the tension and extra pressure that she will no doubt face after joining. She was also asked out on a date by Shisui, but she politely declined. She was also forced to join the Leaf Police Force by her father to gain more power for the clan. His attitude caused her to constantly clash with him and have constant arguments. One such argument became heated when he mentioned that she should not be associating with Naruto. She was about to respond, but was called by her mother away. Before leaving, however, she told him that he shouldn't meddle in her affairs and that his narrow-minded ways was suffocating the clan's potential, shutting the door behind her and leaving a fuming Fugaku behind the door. After that, the only interaction between them was strictly business, and her father began to focus more on Sasuke, which served to increase his arrogance further. Also, after said argument, she only came home to see her mother and spent much of her time on missions, training or hanging out with Naruto. Naruto became like a support pillar for her as she began to trust him with her problems. He always listened and helped her out without asking anything to make her uncomfortable. His positive attitude was like a breath of fresh air for her, and she even helped him in her pranks, which, she had to admit, was a good stress reliever. After joining the Anbu, Naruto noticed that her tension was increasing, and sometimes she showed frustration and irritation on her face before she hid it with her stoic face. He asked her if something was wrong and told her that she could always tell him about it. She just laughed and said everything was fine, but he knew that it was not so. However, he decided not to pry since he doesn't want to force her into something she did not want. He just reiterated that she could talk to him about anything, to which she smiled and nodded at him. Little did she know that her relief was not going to last that long. Konoha. Uchiha clan compound. Naka Shrine. As soon as Izumi entered her house, she was told to be at a meeting at the Naka Shrine. Entering the meeting place, she could see all the clan's major shinobi present and immediately got a bad feeling. They all became silent as Hyugaku entered and stood in front the hall. Good night to my fellow clansmen. I have called this meeting for a serious purpose tonight. By now you are all aware that we have been looked at with suspicion by both the villagers and the village elders after the Kyuubi attack all those years ago. This is due to some claims that the Kyuubi's eyes had a Sharingan pattern on them, and it is widely known that a Sharingan is capable of controlling the Kyuubi. In recent times, our respect between the people and the council has decreased. Our clan helped found this village, and they repay us by not only isolating us, but now they are looking at us as if we were no better than the criminals they put us in charge of. I say that it is time for our clan to take its rightful place among the leaders of this village, and we show them that the Uchiha is still the strongest out there, spoke Fugaku, and almost instantly applause erupted in the halls from his audience. Looking around, Izumi saw that everyone except for Shisui and herself had applauded and gave their support. She was at a loss of how idiotic her father and clan was. Did they truly think that they could take on an entire village and come out on top? The very thought was mind-boggling to her, and knew that it would eventually lead to civil war within the Leaf and weaken the village and spark another war. Then, along with Shisui, she was asked to give information regarding village security and defense procedures, as they were both Anbu and reported directly to the Hokage. Also that they would plan the coup d'etat on the Hokage leaders and replace them with the Uchihas who will rule the village. Leaving, she and Shisui went to a remote location. We have to inform Hokage-sama, spoke Shisui. Nodding to him, she replied, they are fools, and their actions would lead to a civil war and eventually the next great war. Agreeing with her, Shisui left towards his home with the thought of reporting to the Hokage the next day. Arriving at her home and immediately going to bed, she knew that this whole situation became a clusterfuck and now her stress levels were rising. She fell asleep with the hope of finding Naruto and not train tomorrow at all. Next day. Hokage office. The Hokage felt his age catching up to him. Hearing two of his Anbu kneel before him and give him a report, he had to say that the entire thing is pretty awful. His instincts screamed at him that this would become troublesome. Elsewhere, a group of Naras sneezed and muttered troublesome under their breaths. In a commanding tone, he said, rise and remove your masks. Both ninjas complied and stared at him with their onyx eyes as he sighed and rubbed his temples. He looked to them and said, keep reporting to me personally and to no one else. I will try to find a peaceful solution to this. Hi Hokage-sama, was the response in perfect harmony. Nodding to them, they left the office. Getting up, he moved to the window and gazed out into the village. He knew that the elders would make a fuss and demand the clan's execution for this, especially Danzo, who probably had some hidden agendas. He lit his pipe and puffed the smoke as a single thought entered his mind. I'm getting too old for this shit. Time skip 1 year. Konoha. 1 year has passed since the Uchiha meeting, and now we meet our redeeted protagonist currently sitting in his academy classroom gazing outward. Now in his final year, he had perfected the hummingbird style and was now a level 6 seal master, but was approaching level 7. His seal knowledge allowed him to make progress with his father's jutsu and continuously wore the resistant seals on his body. Without them, his speed was around mid to high chunin, while his strength was only around high genin to low chunin, as his style revolved around speed and not strength. He was now 3/4 way through the second stage of fire manipulation and could now heat up the rock, but not able to complete the exercise yet. However, the results showed as his fire jutsus became hotter, consumed less chakra, and was more powerful than before. He was also able to use the triple windmill attack in conjunction with a fire jutsu to cause more damage to his opponents. The image of class dope that he portrayed was still very much intact, and his teachers ignored him, which he wasn't worried about. The only sensei that was impartial to him was Iruka, who he held great respect for. His hand seal speed increased as well to the point where ninjas under the rank of chunin wouldn't be able to follow it. Izumi told him that when he completed his elemental manipulation, he could reduce the amount of seals needed for his jutsu. Over the last year, Naruto found Izumi to be acting strangely. She no longer had the energy for a spar training, but she still came and hung out with him. Needless to say, he was completely fine with that, but his concerns were increasing as of late, especially when she told him that she wanted to spend time away from home. He asked nothing further and she was exceptionally grateful for it. Her time as a double agent for the Hokage now stretched her to the limit, and as the position worsened day by day, she knew that it would not be long before drastic actions were needed. The peace talks had failed, and the coup was entering its final stages of planning. Next day. Hokage office. Sarutobi was now sitting in front of two Anbu agents who had been assisting since the beginning. To his sides were the elders. Koharu, Hamura and Danzo. He did not want it to come to this, but the Uchiha clan had left no options. Closing his eyes for a moment, he spoke, "As you both know, the negotiations have failed. I did not want it to come to this, as the Uchiha are comrades in arms, but I have made the decision to exterminate the clan." The two shinobi looked down in shame and sadness, as no matter what, it was their families and clan members that were marching towards their own destruction. "1 week from today, you will kill everyone over the age of 12 and those who are involved or know of the rebellion. The rest will be taken care of by the village until such a time where they can fend for themselves," spoke the Hokage in a voice that betrayed no emotions. Immediately, Danzo was livid as he spoke out. "Hiruzen, you cannot be serious. You've become soft. Are you going to give them another chance even after all this? Have you gone senile?" Hiruzen became furious at this and raised a bit of his killing intent at Danzo. "First of all, Danzo, I am your Hokage and you will address me as such. Next, the Uchiha are old comrades in arms from back when the village was founded." Hamura and Koharu said nothing in fear of the god of shinobi, as they knew that he still held the power to hold that title. Danzo was fuming in his mind and with gritted teeth, replied, "Hi Hokage-sama." Izumi and Shisui both looked at Sarutobi gratefully, who nodded with his patented grandfatherly smile, and they looked at Danzo with contempt. "Your orders are clear that this will be a Black Ops mission which will commence at midnight. The details will be revealed to the public the next day, and you will both report directly to me and to no one else," said the Hokage, and everyone knew that the last part was meant for Danzo. "Dismissed," he said, and both Anbu agents disappeared and the elders left the room as Hiruzen sat back in his chair and thought of the order he just gave out. Izumi had spent the entire week with Naruto lightly training. Naruto became worried as she retreated into her blank, stoic mask and showed no emotions during the week. Asking about it, but she just said that she was tired. He found it suspicious and thought that something was wrong in her household, but didn't push the subject any further. 1 week later. Uchiha clan compound. Day of the slaughter. Two figures can be seen standing on the walls of the Uchiha compound dressed in black Anbu armor. One had a weasel mask with silky hair flowing in a high ponytail and was 5'2", while the other stood at 5'9" with curly black hair and wore a bird mask. The moonlight illuminated their forms as they soon disappeared to their tasks. Moving through the compound, from house to house and killing the inhabitants except the children and innocent ones, they kept their silence as everyone slept not knowing what was happening. Blood. Blood painted the streets of the compound red as bodies littered the streets throughout. Eyes going cold while Izumi became numb, not feeling anything. Shisui had tears in his eyes as he moved through and slaughtered members of his clan, the guilt building up. However, they did not stop. Could not stop. Killing everyone and making their death swift and painless as they did not even realize when the life left their bodies. Arriving at the head household, they looked at each other and nodded before entering. Moving through the halls via the shadows to the place where Fugaku slept, Izumi opened the door and went in and saw Fugaku looking out the window. Turning to face his daughter, he said in a monotonous voice, "So you have made your choice. You always were a kind child, don't think that this was your fault. Know that I will be proud of you always." Izumi then plunged her blade through his heart as Shisui killed Mikoto in her dreams. Their mission was finished. They had slaughtered their entire clan without an ounce of remorse, and they vanished into the night. Arriving at a training ground, Shisui was finally able to let his emotions out. He began to scream freely as the tears continued to roll out of his eyes and down his cheeks. Meanwhile, Izumi stood there with her face impassive. After some time, Shisui got up and told her that he was going to report to the Hokage as she nodded and he left. As Izumi stood there alone in the field, she looked at her blood-covered hands. The blood of her clan, her family's blood. She went to the stream and began washing them rigorously. She kept rubbing until her hands began to hurt. She threw off her Anbu armor and mask into the water and watched as it flowed down the river. She began to recall the events of what had just transpired. She killed everyone she knew. All her family, her clan dead by her hands. She started to hyperventilate and ran. She ran without thinking where she was going, and before she realized it, she was pounding on the door of an apartment desperately. Inside the apartment, Naruto slept with a soft smile on his face. He was having a great dream when suddenly he was awoken by loud pounding on his door. Getting up, he glanced at the clock and saw that it was 3:45 in the morning. Thinking that it was urgent as it was still so early and the pounding of the door was very loud, he wondered exactly what happened that they would come to his door. Moving towards the door, he opened it and was shocked to see just who was on the other side. He was met with the sight of Izumi, her hair flowing freely in the wind and dressed in a sleeveless black top, black Anbu pants and black shinobi sandals. Suddenly scared that something was wrong, he was about to fire off questions, but stopped himself as she threw herself into his arms and buried her face in the crook of his neck. He immediately wrapped his arms around her and felt something wet on his neck. Knowing that they were tears, he tightened his hold on her as one hand wrapped around her waist and the other cradled her head as he ran his fingers through her silky smooth locks. As soon as his arms were wrapped around Izumi, her emotional dam broke and all the emotions she locked away began to flow freely. All the guilt, grief, despair, sadness and loneliness exploded and she screamed. Naruto just stood there unmoving as he allowed her to cry in his arms, saying nothing except whispering words of comfort in her ear. He knew that she was holding something back all that time, but never expected it to be this heavy. Feeling weak from the emotional drain, Izumi's knees began to weaken and shake. Naruto quickly swept her off her feet and brought her inside, closing the door with hose foot. Parrying her bridal style, he moved towards his bed while she had her arms around his neck and continued to cry and scream into his chest. She proceeded to tell him everything from her father's coup plan, how they went to the Hokage, her being a double agent, and finally her orders and the mission she just completed. Naruto's eyes were wide as she told him, and he held her tighter as her screams turned to sobs, and she finally fell asleep from the emotional drain. Putting her on the bed, Naruto tried to leave to go to the couch, but she squeezed him and buried her face in his neck and curled up against him. He laid down and went under the covers, noting the time to be 7 o'clock in the morning, as he wrapped his arms around her waist, earning a satisfied sigh from Izumi tickling his neck, and he drifted off to sleep. But Shisui at the Hokage office. Hiruzen sat in his office gazing out into the village, not having even an ounce of sleep, as he knew the events that are happening right now at the Uchiha complex. He looked at the clock on the wall and saw that it was almost the end of the operation as Shisui entered the office. "Mission accomplished, Hokage-sama," said Shisui. The old man nodded and simply replied, "Report. All members except 12 children have been eliminated and the threat of rebellion has been quelled and is no more," said Shisui. The Hokage nodded and asked the question on his mind since Shisui came in, "Where is Izumi?" "She's fine, Hokage-sama. She went her own way after the mission. She probably wanted to clear her head of the guilt and sort out her emotions and need recovery time. She did not shed a single tear, nor did she show any emotion when I was there with her," spoke Shisui in a worried tone. Hiruzen nodded, knowing how tough it was for her to carry out those orders, as she was always too kind-hearted for cold-hearted killing. Looking to Shisui, he spoke, "You both are now relieved of your shinobi duties and are placed on the reserve list until your mental sessions with Inoichi is over. Please inform Izumi of this as well. You can go now." Shisui nodded and left the office. The Hokage lit his pipe and thought about the announcement he had to make and the necessary damage control to be done, as they had lost one of the major clans in the village. Leaving the office, he made his way home to get his much-needed rest. Time skip 1 year. Konoha Academy. Today was the ninja graduation exam at the academy, and a lot has occurred in the past year. After Izumi showed up at his door, he did not attend the academy for a week, opting instead to take care of her. He cooked, cleaned and cared for her the entire time. She was an emotional wreck. She would suddenly start screaming where he just took her in his arms as she slowly fell asleep. He recalled what happened at the end of that week. Flashback. Naruto cooked breakfast as Izumi was still asleep in bed. He made some eggs and bacon with some toast and brought some strawberry milkshake that she liked when she visited those cafes. Hearing footsteps, he turned to see Izumi leaning on the counter and smiled. "Good morning, Izumi," he said in his usual voice. Half-heartedly she replied, "Good morning, Naruto." He went back to serving breakfast and they began to eat. They ate in comfortable silence, and when they finished, Naruto took the dishes to the sink to wash them. Hearing something behind him, he turned to see Izumi standing there looking down and shuffling her feet, and he knew she wanted something. "What's up, Izumi?" he asked. "Why?" she asked in a whisper, but he heard it loud and clear. Tilting his head to the side in confusion. "Why aren't you afraid of me? Why do you let me stay here when I was the one who killed my family? Why do you continue to look after me? Why don't you see me as a demon?" Slap. Her sentence was cut short as she felt that stinging pain on her face. Raising her head, she saw a furious expression on his face. Hearing the word demon made Naruto lose any self-control he had. Her eyes widened as she saw tears roll down his cheeks. He never cried, she knew this. So why was he doing so now? Her thoughts were cut short again as he began to speak. "A demon, you say? A demon has no regrets about killing his prey. He kills for fun or for no reason at all. He is not remorseful as you have been all week. He goes out looking for his next prey." He grabbed her wrist and pulled her with him, dragging her along as he made his way to the top of the Hokage monument. She quietly allowed herself to be pulled along as they made their way to their destination. Staring into the village, he began to speak. Look down there, see those people? Those people. Instead of being locked in a civil war where most of them would be afraid to even leave their homes, they are moving about happily. The children can play on the streets without fear. You are responsible for their happiness, their freedom, their peace. You are a hero to these people." He turned around and embraced her as she began to sob uncontrollably. He soothed her while saying, "Never say that you are a demon, I know you better than everyone else, and you are no demon. Never think otherwise." At this, she threw her arms around his neck and continued sobbing in his chest. Flashback end. After that day, Izumi returned to her former state a bit and giggled at his pranks. She laughed loudly when he painted the Hokage monument in broad daylight and no one except her had noticed, and only because he told her to look to the monument at a certain time the day before. People started to notice after he screamed out that Uzumaki Naruto has claimed the Hokage monument database. She laughed until her stomach ached as she watched him evade his pursuers, some of them from the Anbu for over 3 hours, until Iruka finally caught him. In the village, people had begun to treat her more gently thinking she would break if they touched her. After the old man made his announcement, many villagers sympathized with her due to her choices and difficult task that she carried out. She turned colder to the public, but this inadvertently increased her popularity and the amount of her fanboys increased. Sometimes, Naruto would have to use a henge to rid her of them. They despised him for spending so much time with her and the population's dislike of him increased, but he didn't care for their opinions and just ignored them. They had been given permission to live together as the old man thought that it would be good for the both of them. However, the council, the civilian side especially, did not want the village princess to live with a demon brat, but Sarutobi overruled them. He gave them a perverted smile and told them to not do anything he wouldn't. This resulted in Naruto turning red and hitting Sarutobi on his face with his Fuinjutsu book. Izumi also blushed, but her face just turned faint pink. The two newly formed roommates left the Hokage office leaving behind Sarutobi grumbling about traitorous bodyguards. Sasuke became more arrogant after the massacre, he held a deep hatred for the village for ordering his clan's demise and made it his goal in life to avenge and revive his clan. He was spoiled by the people of the village who gave him what he wanted and treated him like glass. Needless to say, this only served to fuel his arrogance even more. He even severed all ties with his sister who had killed the clan. His fangirls, however, gave him even more attention because of his new attitude. As for Naruto's training, he finally completed his fire manipulation training and was almost complete with his water training as well. He had more fluidity in his Taijutsu style due to his dad's restriction seals, which was level 2 out of 10 possible levels. He was now at the end of level 7 in Fuinjutsu and still going through barrier seals and Fuinjutsu by hand seals. He also managed to crack the basics of the Hiraishin and was moving in at a slow but steady pace. He completely mastered his fire ninjutsus and got the required amount of hand seals down to 1 for the fireball technique and 2 for the fire dragon technique. Snapping out of his musings, he saw Mizuki giving out test papers. Of course he got a high-level exam, but he knew enough to pass with an acceptable margin. Afterwards, they went outside for the weapons portion of the exam. Standing at the back of the line as they were being called individually, he took note of each of his classmates' scores. Most girls all got 4 or 5 shuriken and kunai, with the exception of Hinata, Ino, and to his shock Sakura who each managed 7 and above. Then the boys' turn came and the scores were as follows. Hiba, 6S7K. Toji, 5S7K. Shikamaru, 5S5K. Shino, 6S8K. Sasuke, 9S9K. Naruto, 8S9K. Next came the Taijutsu portion where they had to stay for a minimum of 3 minutes and a maximum of 5 minutes against Mizuki. Most girls except Ino and Hinata couldn't make it to the 3-minute mark because of their low stamina due to being fangirls. The boys all went for 3.5 minutes each, except Sasuke, who stayed for 4.5 minutes and came out of the ring with a smug look on his face. Entering the ring, Naruto looked at Mizuki to see a dark smirk on his face, and immediately, Naruto was put on guard. He continued dodging all Mizuki's strikes until the 4.5-minute mark where he lost with Iruka nodding, and Mizuki had a scowl on his face. Then came the ninjutsu part of the final exam. Each student were required to perform the 3 basic jutsus and any other for supplemental credit. Naruto was the last student in, and he did the henge and kawarimi without the use of hand seals which he got extra credit for. He then did the clone jutsu, and 3 clones appeared. Mizuki was shocked and scowled, whereas Iruka was elated and gave Naruto his Hidi-8, neither one of the 2 instructors, realizing that the clones were shadow clones. Walking out of the academy gates, he was stopped by Mizuki who told him about an extra exam given to select students, and if he passed, he would be named Rookie of the Year. Naruto, well suspicious, decided to follow Mizuki to see what the test was about. He was told to steal the Forbidden Scroll and bring it to Training Ground 18, which is near the village gates at midnight tonight. Time skip to the forest just before Mizuki appears. Waiting on the ground near a tree, Naruto opened the scroll and used his Sharingan to memorize some of the jutsus on the scroll. Suddenly, Iruka burst through into the clearing and said, "What the hell are you doing, Naruto? Do you know what you've done? Come, let's go to the Hokage and clear this mess up." Deciding to play stupid, Naruto replied, "What are you talking about, Iruka-sensei? Where is Mizuki-sensei? Are you going to administer the extra test for giving me the Rookie of the Year title?" As he said this, they had to duck as shuriken began flying towards them. It came as a shock to Naruto that Iruka shielded him from the shuriken that was hurled towards him. Seeing this, Mizuki decided to attempt to sway Naruto. "Say, Naruto, do you know why the villagers hate you?" Looking to the man, Naruto replied, "Of course I know, the old man told me when I was 5 that the Kyuubi was sealed in me at birth." This stunned Iruka and Mizuki had a dumbfounded expression on his face. After a moment of silence, Mizuki pulled a shuriken from his back and hurled it into Naruto's chest. Iruka's eyes widened and shouted out his name, while Mizuki just laughed like a madman. Naruto smirked and poofed, indicating that he was a shadow clone. The ground rumbled and Naruto jumped out and connected with a fist to Mizuki's jaw, throwing him into the air. 5 more Narutos appeared and gave Mizuki a beatdown. In the Hokage office. Hiruzen looked at the scene playing out via his crystal ball and couldn't help but feel a sense of pride welling up in his chest. He knew that Naruto was hiding his true prowess from everyone, but he did not care. As these thoughts left his mind, the door opened and in marched Naruto, accompanied by Iruka. He put the scroll on the desk and proceeded to narrate his evening from the end of the exam to the clearing in the forest. When asked what jutsu he learns from the scroll, Naruto replied he learned the multi-shadow clone jutsu and the bringer of darkness jutsu. He did not mention that he also learned the summoning impure world resurrection technique. The Hokage nodded and told him not to teach anyone those techniques as they were quite chakra taxing. Naruto agreed and they were dismissed for the night. As he walked home, he knew that he would get scolded by Izumi after he told her about this, but he did not want to hide anything from her. Sighing, he looked up to the sky and muttered troublesome. Elsewhere, 2 Naras turned in their sleep and muttered troublesome before returning to their slumber. Time skip 1 week. It has been 1 week since the Mizuki incident and Naruto graduated from the academy. The sun rose and our young hero was awake with excitement. Today was team placements and he was ecstatic. He flew off the bed to the bathroom where he brushed his teeth, took a shower and moved to the kitchen where he smelt the inviting aroma of Izumi's special pancakes that he liked. He entered the kitchen and looked towards Izumi, who was dressed in a simple plain white top that hugged her frame and accentuated her well-endowed C-cup breasts. There was a small Uchiha emblem on the collar and buttons with the emblem on them. She wore a blue denim skirt that finished above her knees and wore a cute pink apron over it. Her hair was in its customary ponytail with the same hair clip that Naruto gifted her all those years ago with 2 bangs framing her face. He had no clue how she looked so angelic in those simple clothes, but he was not going to complain. "Good morning, Izumi," said Naruto. Turning around, her cheeks turned rosy as her eyes came upon his form. He was wearing the clothes she ordered and gifted him as a graduation gift last week after scolding him for the Mizuki incident. He wore a blood-red short-sleeved shirt with the Uzumaki swirls on his shoulders, black Anbu pants that she got from her connection in Anbu, black shinobi sandals and black holsters. He wore black bandages on his arms up to the elbow with black fingerless gloves with metal plating on the back. He had a white jacket and a blue forehead protector. She quickly turned to the stove to hide her blush and replied, "Good morning, Naruto." Naruto saw her blush and smiled widely. He came up behind him and whispered into her ear, "Like what you see, Izumi." Her blush deepened and shivers rolled down her spine from his whisper. She turned around and bonked him in the head with her metal spatula and he howled in pain and backed away. She giggled and rubbed his head and placed the dishes on the table. They both ate and Izumi asked about who he wanted as teammates, while Naruto just devoured the pancakes that she knew he liked so much. She looked on with a laugh as he finished and she took the dishes into the kitchen as he helped her to clean them since he had time. He heard her humming a tune while working and he let out a true smile. He was glad that her duties were relieved last year, but now she was restricted to patrols and occasional guard duty inside the Hokage office. He was also glad that she lived with him as he had been alone for so long that he didn't realize how good it was to have someone to welcome you home and cook a warm meal for you, and she was an excellent cook. He placed the last plate in the cabinet and said he was leaving now. She smiled at him and nodded and wished him good luck. He nodded and left. As he walked down the road, most of the villagers did not notice him due to his outfit change. As he turned a corner, he saw someone hidden behind a cloth with the wrong pattern on the wall and sighed. "Konohamaru, you can come out now, I know that you're there." "As I expected of my rival," said the boy, and he challenged Naruto, who told him he had team placements and left. Entering the academy, he saw that he barely made it after his interaction with Konohamaru. He entered the classroom and felt everyone's eyes on him. All the girls had blushes on their faces. Sakura was much more verbal though. "Naruto Baka, what is the big idea of trying to look all cool like Sasuke-kun?" screeched Sakura. He walked past her ignoring her and she screamed his name again. He turned around to face her this time though and said you say something. As the entire class snickered. Iruka then came in and told everyone to take their seats as he began to give his final speech which Naruto tuned out. In the Hokage office. All of the Jounin senseis were gathered and looking at their future's charges through the old man's crystal ball. Upon seeing the interaction between Sakura and Naruto, Kakashi cried in tears muttering that he was so proud while Guy was shouting about Kakashi and his infectious cool and hip attitude. All of the gathered Jounin sweat dropped as Kurenai, Asuma and Hiruzen snickered. Back at the academy. Iruka began to call out team placements. Skip to Team 7 placement. Team 7 will be Sakura Haruno, Sasuke Uchiha and Naruto Uzumaki, with Jounin Sensei Kakashi Haddock, he said as Sakura screamed out about true love conquers, all as Naruto and Sasuke slammed their heads on the table. This made Iruka sweat drop. Shaking his head, Iruka continued, moving on, Team 8 will be Kiba Inuzuka, Hinata Hyuga and Shino Aburam with Jounin Sensei Kurenai Yuhi. Team 9 is in rotation still, so the next team will be Team 10, which will be under Asuma Sarutobi and will contain Ino Yamanaka, Shikamaru Nara and Choji Akimichi. As he finished the team listings, he exited the classroom not before telling the students that their Jounin senseis will be here shortly. After he left, the Jounin senseis for the teams except Team 7 came and took their students and left. They waited for 3 hours which Naruto spent by reading his Fuinjutsu book and eating some lunch that Izumi gave him while Sakura ranted making Sasuke annoyed. Kakashi entered the classroom to find an annoyed Sasuke, a ranting Sakura and Naruto reading a book with not a care in the world. "Meet me on the roof in 5 minutes," said Kakashi as he disappeared. Arriving at the roof and taking a seat opposite Kakashi, they began introductions. "I'm Kakashi Haddock, I have many likes and dislikes. I have some hobbies and my dreams. Those aren't your business. You go Pinky," said Kakashi pointing at Sakura as the 3 newly graduated ninja sweat dropped. "My name is Sakura Haruno, not Pinky. I like." Glances at Sasuke. "My hobbies," looks at Sasuke again, "and my dreams for the future," looks to Sasuke Kaiaya. She stopped with a blush. "And your dislike?" asked Kakashi. "Ino Pig and Naruto Baka," exclaimed Sakura. "The feeling is mutual," stated Naruto as Kakashi sighed at the thought of having a fangirl on his team. "You're next, Emo," said Kakashi looking at Sasuke. "My name is Sasuke Uchiha, I don't have many likes but lots of dislikes. I don't have any hobbies and what I have is not a dream but an ambition. I am going to obtain power and restore the Uchiha clan to power," said Sasuke as Sakura ranted about Sasuke being so cool and Kakashi sighed as this is another power-hungry Uchiha. "You're up, Red. My name is Naruto Uzumaki. I like training, learning and mastering new techniques, spending time with Izumi. I dislike traitors and power-hungry individuals. My dream is to one day have a family of my own and become the strongest ninja possible," finished Naruto as Kakashi eyes smiled. He told them about the True Genin exam and told them to come to training ground 7 tomorrow morning at 6 and don't have any breakfast before leaving. Naruto left and went home ignoring his teammates' discussion. Arriving home, he was greeted by Izumi and he recounted his day to her. She told him that Kakashi was chronically late to everything and that he should eat breakfast to have full energy, which he agreed with. Next morning. Naruto woke up at 7, went through his morning rituals, including eating breakfast with Izumi, before leaving for training ground 7 at 8. Getting there 15 minutes later, Sakura screeched that he was late, but he just ignored it and sat under the tree. Half an hour after, Kakashi arrived and Sakura yelled out, "You're late." Looking at her, Kakashi replied, "A black cat crossed my path, so I had to take the long way around." He then took out 2 bells and said that they had until noon to get these bells from him, and whoever did not have one would be sent back to the academy. He also told them to come at him with the intent to kill. "Ajum," shouted Kakashi as everyone scattered and he pulled out his trusty Icha Paradise and began to read. Naruto stayed hidden and tried to come up with a strategy as, according to Izumi, Kakashi was the best the village had to offer and he knew that there was no way that any of them would be able to hit a Jounin in a fight. Realizing that the test is one of teamwork, he began to think of a way for them to work as a team. However, he knew that it would not work, so he decided to wait until after they confronted Kakashi. He looked on as Sakura was placed in a Jinjutsu where she yelled out something about Sasuke and fell unconscious. Kakashi watched as Naruto came and broke her out of the Jinjutsu, and I smiled as he thought that maybe this team would pass. "Sakura, this test is about teamwork, all 3 of us need to work together. It had nothing to do with the bells at all. Let's go find Sasuke so we can come up with a plan," said Naruto. "Naruto Baka, Sasuke-kun and I will work together. We do not need the help of some clanless orphan loser like you," said Sakura as she stormed off to find Sasuke. Naruto sighed and waved his hands through his hair and decided to look for Sasuke to see if he would understand. He gazed as Sasuke engaged Kakashi. He continued looking until Sasuke was buried to his neck and Sakura passed out when she found him. He walked over to where Sasuke was, told him the test objective and suggested working together. But Sasuke just told him that he does not need the help of a clanless dope like himself as he was an Uchiha, an elite. He left him there and went to Kakashi and stood before him. "I'm surprised, Naruto, I thought you got the meaning of the test, but here you are all alone," said Kakashi, still reading. "I did, but they don't want to work with a clanless orphan loser like me, so I guess I'll have to get the bells alone," said Naruto as he got into his stance for the hummingbird style. Kakashi closed the book and put his hands in his pockets. Naruto had already released his restriction seals and dashed towards his opponent. Kakashi's eyes widened at the speed of the genin as he blocked the strike. They continued to fight in the clearing, and Kakashi was amazed at the flexibility of his potential student. Naruto threw 6 shuriken at him as Kakashi dodged, but he noticed too late that they had ninja wire attached to them. The wire wrapped around him as Naruto thought triple windmill attack. Realizing that he couldn't break free of the wire, Kakashi looked up at Naruto, who went through 2 hand seals, took a deep breath and shouted fire style, dragon flame jutsu. He released the wire as that combo had taken a lot out of him. He suddenly felt movement behind him as he fell unconscious. Behind him a sigh of relief was heard out of Kakashi as his body still ached from that Taijutsu exchange, his clothes cut in multiple places, and his vest half burned as he was able to substitute in time before the last attack. Well, he took my instructions to heart. If I had underestimated him for another moment, I would be a charred mess right now. The skills on this genin is amazing. The Hokage did tell me he was hiding his skill, but this is something else. I guess Izumi disappeared over him, thought Kakashi as he put him near the stump where the other 2 were tied. Naruto woke up and he saw himself leaning against one of the stumps while the other 2 were tied to them. Kakashi then went ahead and told them about the true meaning of the test and how it was teamwork all along. He went on to say how Konoha teams work in teams. He then told them that they passed while telling them that those who break the rules are scum, but those who abandon their comrades are worse than scum before he left. Naruto untied the other 2 and left the clearing towards home. At the Hokage's office. Hiruzen had watched the entire fight via his crystal ball and was proud of his pseudo-grandson. He was truly skilled as he had suspected, but when he remembered that combo from years ago on Shuriken Jutsu, he had seen it performed by only one person, and that was Madara Uchiha while he was sparring against Hashirama. He knew that it was one of his signature moves and knew it required mastery of the Sharingan as well to perform. He realized that Minato must have concealed his heritage and he would also take the secret to the grave if Naruto doesn't wish to reveal it. However, he was proud that his grandson was a master of the Sharingan and he doubted anyone would recognize any of those techniques as they were decades old. He was broken out of his inner musings as his door opened and the Jounin senseis entered the office. "Team 8 pass Ed Kurenai." Asuma responded, "Team 10 passes." Kakashi then entered, bruised tattered clothing and a singed vest. "Team 7 passed," he said with an eye smile. Immediately the room erupted into murmurs of how Kakashi finally passed a team. "What happened to you, Kakashi?" asked Asuma. Looking at him, Kakashi replied, "Well, I gave the standard bell test and told them to come at me with the intent to kill. One of them seems to have taken that quite literally." All the Jounins immediately sweat dropped and Hiruzen just laughed silently. He dismissed all the other Jounins except for Kakashi. When they were alone, Kakashi spoke. "I think you saw proof." Hiruzen said, "Indeed." Continuing, Kakashi said, "The boy is a true prodigy. Pushing myself to such limits even if I held back and underestimated him is quite a feat in itself." Hiruzen proudly nodded and Kakashi left to treat his wounds while Hiruzen had a thought that crossed his mind. That boy looks so much like his parents, it's not even funny. 3 months later. Konoha. 3 months has gone by since Naruto was placed on Team 7 and he was not having a good time since he was stuck doing D-rank missions. Odd jobs such as painting fences, weeding farms and gardens, walking the Inyazuka's dogs and catching the demon cat of the fire daimyo's wife, Tora. His sensei, Kakashi, had only trained them in teamwork exercises and nothing else. His personal studies, on the other hand, was going steady. His restriction seal was on level 2 and his Fuinjutsu was still on the same level since his chakra control was not yet good enough for him to move on to the next level. In regard to Team 7, their teamwork was only present during missions and outside of that he barely tolerated the other members of the team. Izumi always asked about his missions to get under his skin and he would give her a glare while she would shoot him an innocent look, causing him to cave in and tell her what she wants to know. Currently, he was with his team going to the Hokage office to get their new mission. The Hokage office. As they entered, Team 7 spotted Iruka sorting the scrolls while Hiruzen did the administrative work. Ah, Team 7, what will it be today? We have painting the fences, weeding a garden or the Torah mission, said the Hokage. Kakashi replied actually, we'll take a C-rank mission Hokage-sama. Are you sure they are ready Kakashi? Queried Sarutobi, to which Kakashi nodded his head. Very well then. Tossing a scroll at the silver-haired Jounin, he addressed the team in the room, your mission is to escort a bridge builder to the Nami no Kuni and protect him as he finishes the bridge. Send in Tazuna, said the old Kage, and in walked an older man in perhaps his mid-50s smelling of alcohol. Taking a gulp of sake from his flask, Tazuna exclaimed, you gave me brats for protection. Pinky over there looks like she will break if she's given a stick to hold. Sakura looked affronted and had to be held back from attacking the man, while Sasuke gave an annoyed look and Naruto said nothing. I assure you, they are perfectly capable of this mission, besides I am a Jounin, so there is nothing to worry about. Okay team, we leave tomorrow at 8 from the East Gate. Pack enough for a month. Said Kakashi to his genin, who departed immediately after. Naruto's apartment. Naruto went to his home and began to seal his supplies into scrolls and checked his gear and put away some extra supplies in case of emergency. Hearing a commotion, Izumi entered his room after getting permission and saw Naruto sealing up stuff and gained a confused look on her face. What are you doing? She asked. We got a C-rank mission and we leave tomorrow at 8, so I'm packing. I'll be gone for a month. Replied Naruto as he continued to look over his stuff and seal up the necessary items. Ah, she said and looked down and began to stroke her skirt. Naruto noticed this and knew she was bothered by something, as she only did this when something was bugging her. Walking up to her, he asked what's wrong. Nothing, she replied, not meeting his eyes. He knew that she was lying, so he placed his finger under her chin and brought it up and stared into her eyes and asked the question again in a firmer voice. Biting her lip, she replied, nothing, it's just that you're going to be gone and I am still on probation. I'll have no one to train with and I'll be alone in the house and I don't have that many people to talk to. She looked down at the floor and continued playing with her skirt. She knew that she was being selfish, but she hadn't been alone since the massacre and his presence always guaranteed that she had something interesting to do. Now she felt stupid for saying this and thought that Naruto thought of her as being weak and pathetic like those fangirls. She had not wanted to say anything but couldn't hide anything from him after being friends for so long. To the rest of the world, she had an image of an ice queen and a perfect ninja, but with him, she could just be herself, and now she had ruined that. Her lip began to tremble as Naruto placed a hand on her cheek and looked at her with a soft gaze. He knew that she was still dealing with the memories of the massacre, which brought about feelings of loneliness in her. I won't be gone for long, and besides, who says that you wouldn't hear from me for so long? He asked her as she looked at him confused and tilted her head to the side cutely. You can write to me and I'll write back every night just like we used to during your Anbu days, he told her, and she laughed knowing he was right. Plus you can be here to train. I still need to pay you back for the last beating you gave me. He added, and she raised her eyebrow at him. You are 100 years too early for that to happen, she said to him as she patted his head. Is that so? He asked with a smirk, and they gazed at each other seriously for a few moments until they broke out in laughter. Suddenly Izumi wrapped her arms around him and buried her face in his chest as she hugged him, and he just held her. Promise me that you'll write to me every night and come back to me soon. She whispered. I promise, he replied as he rubbed her back and ran his fingers through her silky raven locks and took in the scent of her hair. It smelt of vanilla and was so soft they just flowed through his fingers. So are you gonna give a hug every time I leave town? Questioned Naruto with a teasing tone in his voice. This earned him a smack on his chest as Izumi mumbled baka as she giggled, still holding on to him. After a while of this, she released him and left to go make dinner while he finished packing. The next morning came and Naruto and Izumi were walking towards the gate together. Naruto told her that she didn't have to go to the gate with him to say goodbye like a child, but she would have none of it. People were glaring at him while he made his way to the gate, which Izumi noticed but said nothing of it, for which Naruto was grateful. He had no idea how she would react or if she would call him a demon brat like everyone else. He looked at her and was greeted with a smile as she walked together with him, not a care in the world. They arrived at the gate where everyone was there waiting, and Kakashi just laughed and greeted them both. Naruto, baka, you're late. Screeched Sakura, but Naruto ignored her as he was used to her loud obnoxious voice. However, Izumi had a bothered look on her face. Sakura looked at Izumi and immediately had stars in her eyes. She was the most popular and beautiful girl in town with dozens of fanboys, and to make things better, she was her Sasuke-kun's sister and an Uchiha. If she befriended her, her popularity would skyrocket and Sasuke-kun would finally be hers. She walked up and started pulling her hand, saying, "Come with me, Izumi-sama, you don't want to stand with a clanless orphan baka like him." Izumi pulled her hand away from her grip and Sakura stood there confused. "You're annoying," Izumi said in a cold voice and glared as Sakura leaned away, not understanding what it was she did wrong. Sighing, Naruto placed his hand on her shoulder as she turned to look at him, and his eyes softened. Knowing that it was time for him to leave, she wrapped her arms around him and buried her face into his chest as he gave her a hug. Leaning into her ear, he whispered playfully, "You know people could get the wrong idea if we keep doing this in public," and she giggled. "Oh how I worry," she responded, equally playful. Sakura's jaw dropped at their interaction, seeing Konoha's Ice Queen hug the dope in public. As much as she wanted to make a comment, nothing coherent came out of her mouth. Kakashi then gave the order to move out, which everyone followed. As Naruto exited the gate, he turned and waved at Izumi, and she waved back. Sakura was still dumbfounded at this, as she did not know why Izumi was so gentle with Naruto instead of the usual cold attitude as with everyone else. The journey to Wave was silent as they moved in a diamond formation with Sasuke in front, Kakashi at the rear, and Naruto and Sakura at the left and right respectively. Sakura kept stealing glances at Naruto throughout the trip, obviously wanting to know more, but dared not ask. They continued walking when Naruto noticed two puddles in the middle of the road, despite it not having rained recently and the surrounding area being dry. He glances at Kakashi, who had his nose buried in that book of his. Naruto was immediately on guard. As they passed the puddles, two men with metal gauntlets emerged and wrapped Kakashi with a chain and ripped him apart. Upon seeing this, Sakura screamed loudly as Sasuke and Naruto took a target each and moved. Naruto threw a shuriken onto the chain and tied it to a tree and threw a kunai into the hole to lock it into place as he kicked the assailant. The attacker struck his gauntlet upwards at Naruto as he sidestepped and kicked him in the face, sending him flying backwards. He then made 4 clones to continue the assault with Taijutsu, while he made hand seals and called out fire style. Fireball jutsu, which knocked out his opponent. Looking around, he saw Sasuke finished with his fight and had some scratches but nothing serious as he proceeded to tie up their attackers when Kakashi came out clapping. He congratulated both boys and gave some antidote to Sasuke and turned towards Tazuna. Tazuna informed them of the situation in Nami no Kuni and about Geto and pleaded for their help. Team 7 decided to continue with the mission but decided to camp out for the night. At their campsite, a poof was heard and a crow came into view and sat on Naruto's shoulder with a scroll on its back. Taking the scroll and opening it, he began to read it. After reading, he took out a blank scroll and began to write a response. He was absorbed in his recounting of today's events when Kakashi asked to whom he was writing to which Naruto replied that he was writing to Izumi. Upon hearing this, Sakura was immediately curious and sat down beside him and began to glance at his letter while asking how he knew her. "None of your damn business," replied Naruto as he shoved her away and moved to an unoccupied spot in the clearing to finish his letter and gave it to the crow, who then disappeared in smoke. He then returned to the spot, ignored Sakura's glare and went to sleep with a happy smile on his face, wondering what Izumi was doing. At the same time, Izumi was on her bed thinking the same thing as a poof was heard and the crow appeared and she took the letter and read it. She fell asleep soon after hugging the teddy bear, which Naruto bought for her after she moved in and learned she likes stuffed animals, with a single thought running through her mind. "Come back soon, Naruto, it is too quiet without you." Team 7 was currently on their way to Nami no Kuni via a boat they took after having walked to the shoreline. Thus far, their journey had been uneventful apart from the scuffle with the demon brothers. The ride was silent for the men, while Sakura kept pestering Sasuke for dates, or when she would be tired of this, she would turn to Naruto and ask about his relationship with Izumi and to introduce her after they were back in the village. Usually Naruto would ignore her and she would shout and yell before Kakashi reprimanded her about behavior in front of clients. As they got out of the boat and began walking, Naruto felt something enter his sensory range and threw a kunai into the bushes only for a white rabbit to jump out. Naruto Baka stopped trying to act cool like Sasuke-kun. "You almost killed the poor rabbit," screeched Sakura. Ignoring her, Naruto took a closer look at the rabbit and thought to himself, "Wait a minute. It is summer, so that rabbit should have brown skin, but its skin is white, so that means that it was raised indoors and most likely used for a." "Everyone get down," shouted Kakashi, and they all dropped to the ground as Naruto pulled Tazuna with him. Just as this was done, a giant blade passed overhead and a man appeared on it as it stuck to a tree. Looking up, they saw that the man was wearing cow print pants, bandages over his mouth, and was currently shirtless. AN thinks Abusa from his canon appearance. Well, it's Hada Kakashi, the copy ninja also known as Sharingan no Kakashi. "Now it's clear why the demon brothers failed, they were no match for you," said the man while laughing. Meanwhile, both Naruto and Sasuke raised an eyebrow at the Sharingan remark. "Zabuza Mamachi, the demon of the hidden mist, former Kiri ninja and member of the 7 swordsmen of Kiri," said Kakashi. "Ah, you know of me, good. Now if you would be so kind as to hand over the bridge builder, then I can leave," said Zabuza. "Sorry, but my mission is to protect him, so I would have to decline," said Kakashi as he raised his hideate, exposing an implanted red eye with 3 Tomo in it. At the sight, Naruto gasped and Sasuke seethed at the sight of the Sharingan in the hands of an outsider. "Oh, the famous Sharingan already, eh? I am quite honored you think so highly of me," said Zabuza. "Ninpo. Kurigakure no Jutsu," said Zabuza as thick fog and a lot of Kai washed over the soon-to-be battlefield. Naruto activated his Sharingan under the seal and saw that it was no use as the fog was too thick and laced with chakra. "Be careful, he is a master at the art of silent killing," warned Kakashi as he let out a wave of his own chakra and Kai, resulting in the mist being dispersed a bit. 8 points: liver, kidney, larynx, lungs, heart, bladder, neck or abdomen. Which shall I strike first? A disembodied voice was heard as Zabuza appeared in the middle of Team 7 and Tazuna and slashed his sword at Tazuna, which was blocked by Naruto who predicted it with his Sharingan. Taken by surprise, Zabuza kicked at his chest and sent him backwards as Kakashi took advantage and sliced Zabuza's neck with his kunai, only for Zabuza to turn into water as another Zabuza appeared and sliced through Kakashi, who turned into water himself and reappeared bang him and placed his kunai by his neck. "It's over," said Kakashi coldly, but Zabuza turned to water as the original came behind him and kicked him into the lake. "This water is quite heavy," murmured Kakashi as Zabuza appeared in front of him. "Water style. Water prison jutsu," laughed Zabuza as Kakashi was caught. "Damn it. You three, take the bridge builder and run. He can't move while the jutsu is active. It was over the minute I was caught," yelled Kakashi. "Water style. Water clone jutsu," was heard as a Zabuza doppelganger showed up to engage Team 7. "Tajuwu Kage Bunshin no Jutsu," exclaimed Naruto as 20 Naruto clones appeared. "Oh, the shadow clone jutsu, huh, and there is quite a bit of them too," said Zabuza as he doubled the amount of water clones present. As the clones engaged into jutsu, Naruto used the chaos to use a sealess Kawarimi to get into a nearby tree and began to form hand seals ending in tiger fire style. "Dragon flame jutsu," yelled out Naruto as Zabuza's eyes widened at the sight of white flames coming towards him and he didn't have time to block and jumped back to avoid it, breaking the water jutsu, freeing Kakashi. "Good job, Naruto. Excellent plan in the heat of battle. I couldn't do better myself," praised Kakashi. He had seen the substitution with his Sharingan and this plan was an excellent one for Konoha's prankster king from hell. "Heh. I got distracted, big deal," said Zabuza. "Don't flatter yourself," replied Kakashi, "you were forced to let go." Then both ninjas began another exchange as Kakashi copied each of Zabuza's movements and even completed some before him. Seeing this, Zabuza could only wonder. "He could see the future," said Kakashi. "How did you?" began Zabuza. "Know what you were thinking," finished Kakashi and Zabuza fumed. "I'll show you copying, you monkey," said Zabuza as he flew through hand seals as Kakashi began to copy them, but this time ended his sequence before. "Water style. Great vortex jutsu," came the voice of Kakashi as a huge water vortex formed from the lake and slammed into Zabuza straight into a tree as he fell unconscious. Kakashi drew a kunai to finish the job when suddenly two senbon struck Zabuza in the neck and a young boy with a Kiri Hunter nin mask appeared next to him. Checking for a pulse but finding none, Kakashi nodded to the hunter who took Zabuza's body and his blade and vanished. Kakashi walked towards his team and fell over unconscious halfway there. Sakura yelled out in concern, but Naruto assured her that it was chakra exhaustion due to overuse of the Sharingan. He deactivated his own Sharingan as he began to feel the fatigue from the battle. He turned to Tazuna, asked for directions to his home and hefted Kakashi to carry him. Not long after, they arrived at Tazuna's home as he knocked the door and a woman came out. "Father, you've returned," said the woman. "Yes, it was all thanks to these super ninjas," exclaimed Tazuna. "Excuse me, miss, can we get a place to put our sensei to rest? He is exhausted from the fight before we came here," said Naruto. Tsunami, as they learned her name was, guided them to a room where Naruto placed Kakashi down to rest. Afterwards, he made 20 clones to keep watch and secure the perimeter. At the sight of the clones, Sasuke asked, "What did you do, Dobe?" Naruto looked at him before replying, "I sent the clones out to do some scouting as well as securing the perimeter. If something happens, the clone would dispel and I'll get the information." Then he left asleep on the couch. Sasuke, hearing this and thinking Izumi taught him that seethed and caused his blood to boil. He had to do something to get stronger, but he would wait till he activated his Sharingan and then he could copy all the jutsu he wanted. Kakashi awoke and found himself to be in pain as the after effects of his battle came upon him. He looked around and saw Sasuke taking care of him while Naruto slept in a futon. "How long have I been out?" he asked. "A few hours," replied Sasuke, and Kakashi nodded. "Shouldn't you keep a lookout for intruders?" inquired the injured sensei, to which Sasuke replied, with gritted teeth, that Naruto had created clones to do that task. Kakashi nodded proudly at his student's planning as it seemed that he always seemed to plan ahead in dangerous situations. "Wake up, Naruto, and call Sakura here, I have things to tell you all," ordered Kakashi, and Sasuke did as he was told. After everyone gathered, Kakashi told them that Zabuza was still alive. This news was met with a bewildered look from Sakura, but Kakashi went on to explain how hunter nins usually operate when dealing with missing nins, and that senbon can be used to induce a false death state. As he finished, Sakura asked in a shaky voice what they were going to do, and he smiled at her. "You are going to train, of course," said the silver-haired nin. "Sensei, what is some training going to do to help when you almost lost against Zabuza, and now there is that masked nin with him," said Sakura. At this, Kakashi replied that he underestimated Zabuza and that next time he shall do no such thing, as he intends to finish him by himself while they would take care of the masked nin. He further asked who was it that saved him last time, but nobody said anything. The next day. The next morning found Team 7 outside in a clearing where Kakashi was explaining their training to them. "Today, my cute little genin, you are going to learn how to climb trees," said Kakashi. With a confused look on her face, Sakura voiced out her thoughts. "How can climbing trees help us, sensei?" At this, the sensei of Team 7 explained that the exercise helps in chakra control and building up reserves, and also how to perform the exercise. "Sensei, I already know this exercise," said Naruto, and Sasuke stood in rage as the dope was ahead of him again, while Kakashi just smiled. He then informed Naruto that he would be going to guard the bridge builder with him and instructed him to follow him. As they moved out of hearing range from the clearing, Naruto asked his sensei what he wanted to for quite some time. "Hey sensei, do you know any lightning manipulation exercises?" Kakashi looked at him in surprise and responded, "Don't you think that is a bit advanced for you, Naruto, and do you have a lightning affinity?" At this, Naruto responded that he had a strong lightning affinity, but he had already completed fire manipulation exercises, to which Kakashi nodded as he understood now why Naruto's fire jutsu packed such a punch. Deciding that there was no harm in it as lightning users were rare in Konoha, as after the Yondaime, he was the only one left besides the Sandaime that had a lightning affinity. He went over to Tazuna and got a light bulb which he gave to his student. "Now then, this is the first lightning manipulation exercise. You have to light this bulb with your lightning nature chakra and keep it lit for 10 minutes. I will not give you any jutsus until you complete this exercise, as lightning is one of the most dangerous and offensive elements. Now get to it." When they arrived back at Tazuna's, they saw a little kid by the name of Inari. He was silent, not that Naruto cared. Sasuke asked what training he did, and when he found out demanded Kakashi to begin his training in elemental manipulation. However, Kakashi refused, stating that he needed to have better control of his chakra and that he did not have any chakra paper to check affinities. Sasuke just snorted and said he was going to sleep. Naruto was startled when a crow suddenly entered and landed on his shoulder. However, he knew that it was from Izumi. He took the scroll and read it. She told him that she was training for their next spar and to come home soon. He smiled warmly and began to write his response. He told her about his encounter with Zabuza and included the 3 jutsu he copied from Zabuza, as he knew she had a water affinity. He also mentioned about Zabuza's accomplice and how they would have to fight again in a couple days. He gave the letter to the crow, who poofed away to deliver his letter. Meanwhile, in Konoha, Izumi was in bed when the crow appeared with Naruto's response. She took the letter, dismissed the crow and began to read. Her eyes widened when she read about Zabuza and his accomplice. She was uneasy about his upcoming battle, but raised her eyebrow at the net of the letter when she saw a seal. She unsealed it and saw 3 scrolls containing the jutsu Naruto had copied. All 3 were high A-rank techniques, and she saw that they were extremely detailed. She laughed and hugged the scrolls tightly and thought only one thing: that idiot, he's on a mission and still thinks about me. 1 week later. It has been 1 week since Team 7 had fought against Zabuza, and they knew that soon they would have to face him and his accomplice in battle. Inside the room, Naruto slept like a log in his futon. The previous day, he had trained extensively and assisted in the bridge's construction through the use of his shadow clone jutsu. Kakashi and the rest of the team had gone to the bridge, allowing Naruto to rest up. Naruto awoke and found that no one was there except himself. He deduced that his team had left him here and had gone to the bridge. He heard screaming and fighting coming from downstairs, so he immediately arose and got ready before sneaking outside through the window and moved down the wall. As he peered through the kitchen window, he saw Tsunami being taken with Inari yelling them to not take his mother away. Inari charged at the attackers who were prepared to send him to the next world. They brought their blades downwards as Tsunami screamed in fright of losing her only child. Suddenly, they heard a metallic clang and looked to see that a kunai was blocking their blades as Naruto crouched down before them. In the hands of the other thug, Tsunami was replaced by a shadow clone who had performed the substitution jutsu at the last minute. Taking advantage of their momentary confusion, Naruto and the clone slammed their knees into the thug's solar plexus and knocked the wind out of them. They then brought the thugs' heads to their knees as a sickening cracking sound was heard and both thugs were down for the count. Naruto then dispelled his clone and moved to Inari and his mother. He ruffled the young boy's hair as Tsunami thanked him. Instructing the mother-son duo to go somewhere safe, he left the house and headed towards the bridge. With Team 7 on the bridge. Kakashi and the other members of Team 7, along with Tazuna, had just arrived at the bridge where they found corpses belonging to the workers. All of a sudden, fog started rolling in, and Kakashi immediately went on guard, which was mimicked by his two students. A chuckle was heard through the mist as two figures could now be seen. "We meet again, Kakashi, where is the other brat from last time?" asked Zabuza. "They'll be here. Don't worry, we'll entertain you until that time," was Kakashi's reply as he raised his hideate. Kakashi then ordered Sakura to protect the bridge builder and Sasuke to take the masked nin while he handles Zabuza. "Look, your genin there is shaking with fear," said Zabuza as he laughed silently. Fuming, Sasuke responded that he was shaking out of excitement, not fear. Kakashi and Zabuza disappeared into the mist as the masked nin and Sasuke attacked each other with a senbon and kunai. While pressing with the senbon, Haku made one-handed hand signs and called out 1,000 flying water needles of death. The water rose around him forming several needles and moved to the arrogant Uchiha. Sasuke channeled chakra to his feet and evaded the attack. Haku swiftly went through some hand signs and called out ice style. Demonic ice mirrors. A dome of ice surrounded him and Sasuke. As Haku entered one mirror, he said, "Please give up, I don't wish to kill you. No one has escaped this alive." At this Sasuke responded, "You cannot defeat me. Only an Uchiha can defeat an Uchiha." He then made hand seals and shouted out fire style. Great fireball jutsu. The fireball collided with one of the mirror but had no effect. This stunned Sasuke as Haku informed him that such an attack would not be able to melt his ice mirrors and once again pleaded with him to surrender. Sasuke refused to give up and even stated that his ability was below him and that of the Sharingan. Haku sighed at this and began to bombard Sasuke with senbon needles at fatal points on the body. However, Sasuke was able to dodge them, impressing Haku until he stared into his foe's eyes. Seeing his usually black eyes crimson red with one tomo in each eye, he uttered his eyes. Confused by this, Sasuke looked into one of the nearby mirrors and saw that he had finally awakened his Kekkei Genkai, the Sharingan. He smirked to himself, now he was invincible was the thought running through his head. He continued to dodge needles being thrown for a bit but was unable to keep up after a few minutes. Seeing his opponent on his knees gasping for breath, Haku decided that it was time to end it and threw some poison senbon. Eyes widening as he knew he could not dodge in time, Sasuke frantically looked around for a way out of his predicament. Suddenly he found a way. Outside the dome, Naruto had arrived and saw that he could not enter as he gazed at the structure using his Sharingan. Sasuke yelled out Naruto. Both Kakashi and Zabuza turned their heads to the dome of ice to see Sasuke smirking at Naruto before going up in a poof and replacing himself with his teammate. Naruto was inside the dome and was confused. One moment he was outside watching Sasuke get killed, the next he was inside with a pain on the back of his head. He then fell forward. Kakashi widened his eye at the trick his genin pulled on his own teammate while Zabuza commented, "That's low even for me. I had no idea that Leaf Shinobi had fallen this far." Kakashi did not respond, but internally, he was seething with rage. All of a sudden, all present felt a wave of malicious chakra and killing intent wash over the bridge. Inside Naruto's mindscape. "So I have finally being visited by my jailer," said a deep rumbling voice. Naruto looked up and saw a cage with a paper on it with the kanji for seal written on it. "Kyuubi, where am I? Am I dead?" asked a boy as he saw the fox open his eyes and stare at him. The fox replied, "No, you aren't dead, but close to it if I had not interfered. After all, if you die then I die." Wondering what had happened, Naruto moved to ask the fox. As if reading his mind, the nine-tailed fox informed him that his teammate substituted himself with him to avoid his opponent's killing blow. He continued by saying that cursed clan should have been eliminated ages ago. "Boy, not all of them are like that. They aren't all bastards like Sasuke," said Naruto. "Ah, you are referring to that vixen that lives with you, huh? Ahahaha, how idiotic. That cursed clan would do anything for power, you will see. You have only been given an example by your Uchiha teammate," said the fox with an amused smile on his visage. He knew it would get under Naruto's skin. Naruto became incensed. He was livid. How could the fox make such accusations about Izumi? He immediately blew up. "How dare you say those things about Izumi, you overgrown furball. I swear I will make you eat those words if you say something about her again," exclaimed Naruto, letting loose a huge amount of killing intent at the fox. This made the fox silently regard him and raise an eyebrow. This only amused him, and his satisfied smile only served to infuriate Naruto more. "As amusing as it is, I still need you to leave as I have stopped the damage temporarily. You will keep your awareness as my chakra flows within you. Afterwards, you are going to need serious medical attention as that senbon was poisoned by the ice wielder. Now begin," said the fox as Naruto was ejected from his mindscape. Out on the bridge. Naruto awakened, feeling quite powerful as demonic chakra receded back in his body. Everyone was gobsmacked that he was alive. His nails were longer, and his eyes became red with a black slitted pupil in it. He turned to Haku and before the ice wielder could react, he was punched through one of the mirrors and fell to the ground unconscious. The laugh was heard as Gato appeared accompanied by several of his hired goons. He gloated to Zabuza about how he was never going to pay him and just have him finished off here after his matchup on the bridge. Signaling for a truce, Zabuza and Team 7 joined forces to take out the thugs present. Inari came soon with the townspeople and chased off the remaining goons. Naruto collapsed to the ground as soon as the fighting ended, causing Kakashi to rush over and attempt to stabilize him. Knowing that Naruto would need the expert medics of Konoha, he immediately ordered Team 7 to gather their things that they were leaving immediately. Kakashi summoned Pakken to send a message to the Hokage to get medics ready at the gates. Soon the team left Wave Country for home at full speed, while Tazuna decided to name the bridge the Great Naruto Bridge in honor of the town's hero. It took Team 7 half a day to reach Konoha as Kakashi pushed them past their limits. As they approached the gates, they saw the medic standing there along with the Sandaime. He was concerned as soon as he got the message via Pakken, and while he knew Kakashi should have abandoned the mission, he decided to focus on Naruto's recovery, scolding Kakashi about it later on. The medical team took Naruto to the hospital immediately as they worked on him. 2 weeks later, Konoha Hospital. Naruto flickered open his eyes as he stared around the room where he was currently situated. Seeing that he was in the hospital as he immediately recognized the white ceilings and smell of the room. Gazing at the clock, he saw the time being 2 in the morning. He attempted to sit up, but that was proven futile as he found a weight on his chest and looked down. He was greeted by the sight of a disheveled raven hair. His movement caused Izumi to stir and wake up from her dream. The last 2 weeks had been strenuous for her. When an Anbu told her that the Hokage wanted to see her, she got the distinctive feeling that something was wrong. Then the Hokage had told her of Naruto's latest mission and about her brother's trick, which resulted in Naruto being poisoned and being in the hospital. Hearing this, she immediately rushed to the hospital where she had been informed that Naruto had been poisoned and now was stable but in a coma, and they were unsure as to when he was going to wake up. As she looked into the room, she could feel her whole world crumbling around her as she gazed upon the form of the usually hyperactive Reed who was laying there lifeless, connected to many machines. She had not left his side other than to go to the bathroom and getting food at the hospital cafeteria, stubbornly refusing to leave. Sleep had also eluded her the entire time as her mind was full of worry. She had just dozed off when she felt movement under her. She opened her eyes to see 2 sapphire pools staring back at her. They gazed into each other's eyes for a moment later before she realized that he was awake and widened her eyes. She then proceeded to glomp him between her breasts, almost suffocating him. Naruto was trying to gasp for air, but he was held in place by an iron grip. Finally, he was released from his fleshy prison and sucked in air in relief. He attempted to speak, but his throat was hoarse, which was rectified when Izumi handed him a glass of water and held him to drink it slowly. "I didn't realize you would miss me so much," he teased, which earned him a bonk on the head. "What was that for?" he asked. "You stupid idiot, you've been in a coma for 2 weeks now, and that is the first thing you say to me when you first wake up," said Izumi as she was panting heavily at the end of her rant. Naruto looked down and noticed that her eyes were puffy from lack of sleep and screaming. He wrapped his arms around her as she cried into his shoulder before melting into his arms. He held her for a few more minutes before her cries subsided but didn't let go. She pulled away and rubbed his whisker marks as he purred, which elicited a giggle from her. Realizing what he did, Naruto turned away with a blush on his face in embarrassment. "Don't do that. I am not a cat, don't treat me like one," said Naruto as he huffed, leading to Izumi to giggle even more. After a moment he joined in the laughter before she yawned. Telling her to return to sleep as it was still night, Izumi placed her head on his chest and fell asleep without any trouble. Naruto wrapped one arm around her and caressed her hair with the other before falling asleep himself with a smile on his face. Time skip 3 months later, Konoha. It has been 3 months since Naruto woke up in the hospital. Over this time, many changes had occurred. After the stunt pulled by Sasuke, he was reprimanded in front of the entire council by the Hokage. Needless to say, the civilian side attempted to interfere, but they were forced into submission by a glare from the Hokage and clan heads. He was sentenced to spend a month with Anko to ensure that he learns the important lesson of valuing his comrades. He was told by the Hokage that if he is responsible for any further events that put the lives of his comrades in danger, he would have his chakra and Sharingan sealed off. Even though he had become more arrogant after the events of the Wave mission due to his awakening of the Sharingan, Sakura did not change her behavior. She still fawned over Sasuke, requested for an introduction to Izumi, or was overly concerned of her looks. Naruto had learned from Izumi that Sakura visited him in the hospital while he was in a coma. However, she did so to berate him, telling him that he had gotten in Sasuke's way and that would not wake up from the coma ever. Even going so far as to suggest to Izumi to come with her so that she could be in the company of someone who is closer to her status. In response, Izumi had released an enormous amount of killing intent and told her to leave before something happens to her that she would not regret. Sakura had run with her tail between her legs and never showed her face at the hospital again. In terms of skill level, Naruto had finally managed to get to level 7 of Fuinjutsu and could now do seals with the use of hand seals. His restriction seals went up a level and his lightning manipulation also moved to where he could light up a bulb for about 5 minutes. He had learned that his lightning affinity was as strong as the Nidaime Hokage's water affinity. His wind affinity had also progressed to the point where he was ready to cut a waterfall, but due to the lack of waterfalls around Konoha, that was put on the shelves for the moment. He had finished all manipulation exercises for his fire affinity and had added 2 new fire-type jutsu, 3 new wind jutsu, and 1 lightning jutsu to his arsenal. Kakashi also taught him the Shunshin and Naruto combined it with his lightning element to create the lightning Shunshin, which was faster than the regular version, but not quite at the level of Shusui Uchiha yet. Izumi had asked about the principles behind his creation and developed her own water variant of it. This was their personal technique and they did not wish to teach it to anyone and it couldn't be copied since it requires no hand seals. Kakashi had checked what the affinity was for Sasuke, who had a primary affinity for Earth. Thus Sasuke was taught Earth Style, Earth Wall and Earth Style, Earth Dragon Bullet, 1 defensive and 1 offensive move. Sasuke had demanded more, but Kakashi refused as his reserves were not high enough to use higher rank jutsus yet. Sakura had 2 small reserves to utilize ninjutsu, so she had been trained in genjutsu. Her lower reserves meant better control, so Kakashi suggested that she be a medical nin, but she refused, stating she wanted to fight to impress Sasuke-kun. So instead, he taught her a bit about poisons, so she might have something to protect herself. Currently, they were training in the usual grounds when a hawk flew overhead and Kakashi immediately left knowing what this meant. He gave the team instructions to continue with their routines and that he would be back soon. In the Hokage office. Hiruzen looked upon the various Jounin senseis inside his office. This was time for the biannual Chunin exams. He asked if any sensei wished to nominate their teams for participation. As soon as he finished his question, Kakashi stepped up and announced his nomination for his team before stepping back. His action was mimicked by the other senseis of the other rookie graduates, as well as Mito Gai, Jounin sensei of Team 9. Immediately grumblings were heard, but was quickly shut down by the Hokage, who passed out the forms to the respective senseis. Back at Team 7's training grounds. Kakashi returned to the grounds to see that his team were still going through their routines. He called them over and explained that the Chunin exams were almost here and that he had nominated them. He further explained that the exams were by choice and that if they wished to participate, they should sign these forms and be at room 301 at the academy in 1 week's time. He then gave out the forms and left the clearing, followed by the genin, who dispersed towards their homes. Naruto arrived at his apartment to think what he wished to do. He was certain he was ready for it, but was unsure if he could trust his teammates after the wave mission. But then again, they have been working flawlessly together. He had no desire to remain constant just because of his teammates, and after promotions he could work with the other teams. He was so deep into his thoughts that he did not notice that Izumi came in and sat next to him until she spoke up. "What are you thinking so hard about?" she inquired. He took the slip from his hands and passed it to her for her to read it. She read it and asked if he was going to enter the exams. She knew that he possessed the qualities of a Chunin, and he was probably just thinking of his team. "Yes, I am going to compete and take the next step of my career. I will not be held back just because of my team," replied Naruto. Suddenly there was a knock on the door. Izumi got up to answer it and Naruto followed behind her. She opened the door to find an Anbu agent who gave her a scroll and promptly disappeared. She opened it, read it using her Sharingan before burning it. "Something wrong? What did it say?" asked Naruto as he caught her thoughtful gaze. She replied that it was nothing, just that she had been assigned to the Anbu guard detail during the 3rd round of the Chunin exams. He nodded in response before asking if she wanted to go out to get food, which she agreed to. Naruto and Izumi were both going to their favorite sushi restaurant when they spotted a square rock with 2 eye holes on it. This led to Naruto sighing and Izumi giggling at the stealth attempt. "Konohamaru, rocks aren't square and definitely don't have eye holes, you know," said Naruto. As he finished his sentence, the rock flew off in the area covered in smoke as Konohamaru, Yuden and Mogi got out. "As expected from my rival boss. Hey boss, Izumi ni-chan, let's play ninja," shouted Konohamaru as Izumi poked his forehead while Naruto said another time. They were interrupted by Sakura, who made her presence known by screeching out, "Naruto Baka, what kind of a ninja plays ninja? And quit wasting Izumi-sama's time." This earned her an annoyed look from Izumi and caused Naruto to sigh. "Hey boss. Is this your this?" questioned Yuden while raising his pinky finger. This action caused Naruto to turn green with disgust as Izumi giggled at the sight of his reaction. "Are you whack, Yuden? If anyone is to be boss's girlfriend it is going to be Izumi Ni-chan," said Konohamaru as Naruto flushed while Konohamaru grinned at the sight before he continued. "See, they look good together, unlike that flat-chested bubblegum-haired girl with that huge forehead that I could paint the Hokage monument on and still have space remaining. How dare you confuse her as boss's girlfriend or even compare her to Izumi Ni-chan." Naruto had gone red like a tomato after that explanation, while Izumi turned pink while caressing her skirt. The sinister aura then enveloped the clearing as Konohamaru turned to see that it was Sakura emitting the aura while cracking her knuckles and eye twitching. "What did you say, you little shit?" questioned the pink-haired thing, causing Konohamaru to dart away in fright of her. Naruto and Izumi chased after them and they soon came upon the sight of the Hokage's grandson being held by a foreign nin in a cat suit with makeup on. He was accompanied by a blonde girl with her hair in 4 pigtails with a giant fan on her back. Sakura was telling them to stop it and that it was an accident. "Boy clown, let the kid go," shouted Naruto as Izumi giggled at his side while the blonde snickered. "I am not a clown, you idiot," yelled the boy and turned to glare. "I'm sorry miss, can you let him down please," responded Naruto as Izumi laughed louder while the blonde was holding her sides. "I am a boy, you stupid idiot," ranted the individual. "Then why are you wearing makeup?" asked Naruto as innocently as he could, which caused Izumi to hold her sides as tears came out with her laughter and the blonde was on her knees pounding the ground to get her laughter under control. The male in the cat suit yelled out that it was war paint and dropped Konohamaru, who immediately sought safety behind Naruto and Izumi before moving his hands behind him only to feel steel on his neck. "Take your hands off the bundle," intoned Naruto from behind the now confirmed puppeteer, surprising those in the street by his speed. "And tell your teammate in the trees to come down too," said Naruto in a louder voice so that those on the trees could hear him. Sasuke, who was on the trees watching the proceedings, was startled as he heard a voice behind him. "Pankura, you are an embarrassment to our village," was the words of a red-haired boy with bags under his eyes and a gourd strapped to his back. He then shunshed to the ground while Naruto moved back to Izumi's side and Sasuke said that the dope was able to do that. The red-haired boy apologized for his teammates' actions, which Naruto nodded to before turning around to leave with Konohamaru and Izumi following him. Sasuke jumped down and demanded to know the Sunanin's name, to which the red-haired boy replied that he was Gaara of the desert before inquiring as to the identity of you. Sasuke replied that he was Uchiha Sasuke, heir to the Uchiha clan. "No, you do not interest me. I would like to know your names," said Gaara as he looked to Izumi and Naruto as Sasuke fumed at being disregarded. Naruto and Izumi gave their names as Gaara nodded before saying that mother will have their blood before ordering his teammates to leave. Naruto just left the clearing towards the sushi restaurant, not noticing the looks Temari was giving him, nor the looks Izumi was giving Temari. Time skip 1 week later. Naruto had spent the last week just doing light training, reading and spending time with Izumi in order to be fully rested for the exams. We can find him at the academy entrance where he saw Sasuke brooding as usual and Sakura pestering him for a date. He passed by them and entered the academy. They arrived at the 2nd floor where Naruto noticed the Genjutsu but said nothing as he knew the purpose of it. Unfortunately, Sasuke decided to give away the secret by announcing the Genjutsu to all those present, with Sakura gushing at how cool Sasuke-kun was. "That idiot, he only increased the amount of competition now by doing that," thought Naruto as he sighed. The 2 guards attacked with a kick while Sasuke mimicked them, but their strikes were blocked by a young boy wearing a green leotard and bushy eyebrows known as Rock Lee. Naruto observed the newcomer and saw the rest of his team. A Hyuga with an arrogant look on his face and a girl whose hairstyle reminded him of a panda. He watched then Quarrel and the boy asking out Sakura but was rejected. He left with his team towards the door but was stopped once again by Lee, who challenged the Uchiha to a fight and soundly defeated him. Naruto noticed with his Sharingan that his chakra network was damaged and that under his bandages were numerous scratches and marks on his hands, indicating that not only is he a pure Taijutsu user, but also he is an extremely hard worker. The fight was broken up by a man who looked like he could be Lee in the future or his father. They were then subjected to the sunset of youth Genjutsu by teacher and student. After getting out of that horrid display, Naruto and the others arrived at the door where they saw Kakashi waiting for them. Naruto asked Kakashi if he knew what an eternal rival was, as his sensei's eye widened as he asked if it was a person wearing a green leotard with an orange leg warmers. At Naruto's nod, Kakashi asked if he agreed, to which Naruto shook his head, negatively causing the one-eyed Jounin to sigh as his student had dodged a bullet there. Naruto's sweat dropped at his teacher's expression as he and his team pushed the door open and entered the room with one thought in mind. Let the Chunin exams commence. As Team 7 entered the room, they saw that it was full with genin from different villages, a lot of whom were releasing killing intent at them. Sasuke and Sakura were a bit intimidated, but Naruto just shrugged it off. Izumi had exposed him to much worse killing intent, and he housed a bloodthirsty demon fox in his gut. It was kinda hard for these genin to frighten him. He looked around the room when he heard a squeal. "Sasuke-kun. Did you miss me?" asked Ino as she jumped on his back, hugging him from behind. "Be no pig. Get your hands off Sasuke-kun," shouted Sakura as they began to argue with each other. Naruto just tuned them out as he heard a lazy voice behind him. "Man, you're in this thing too, Naruto." "Troublesome," said Shikamaru. This caused Naruto to chuckle at him and greet Choji with a nod, who reciprocated the gesture. Teammate then walked up with Kiba leading. "Seems like the gang's all here," said Kiba in a boisterous voice. Naruto shook his head at him and nodded to Shino, who nodded back. He gave a smile to Hinata, who blushed and hid behind Kiba. She was just too shy for her own good. "You guys are loud," came an unknown voice. All of the rookies turned to see a silver-haired genin with glasses and a Konoha hideate on his forehead walking up. He introduced himself as Kabuto Yakushi and told them a bit of the exams and that this would be his 7th attempt. He also offered his nin info cards to give them information on people in the room. Sasuke jumped at the chance and asked for intel on Rock Lee and Gaara of the desert, while Shikamaru asked for Naruto Uzumaki, as everyone stared at the lazy Nara in surprise. Naruto gave him a glare which earned him a smirk on the Nara's face. Kabuto began with Lee and said that he was a Taijutsu user who did not use ninjutsu or genjutsu. He then moved on to Gaara, where he told the group that he was a foreign nin, so all he had was mission stats and teammates, but he did say that he was never injured on any mission. Before he could read out Naruto's card, it was snatched from him as Naruto read it. This shocked Naruto as it had his true skills on here. It was actually too detailed. It contained his Fuinjutsu skill, his mission with Mizuki and his elemental affinities. It was all perfect and detailed. He channeled his fire chakra and burned the card before leveling Kabuto with an icy glare which made said genin nervous and sweating. "I do not know where you got all that intel on me, but your information was extremely detailed, and you said that this is your 7th attempt. Well, this is only our first try, yet you have such intel. That fact is very strange," said Naruto as Kabuto's sweating increased. Naruto was suspicious of Kabuto as he had classified intel and stuff that nobody else knew of. Luckily for the silver-haired genin, a cloud of smoke appeared and Ibiki Marino arrived and quickly gave instructions to commence the first part of the exams. As they received their papers, Naruto saw the need to cheat and activated his Sharingan behind the seal and began to copy from someone, while Sakura knew the answers. He looked at the 10th question and noticed a restriction and just decided to wait for it to play out. After some time, Ibiki announced the 10th question, which turned out to be a make-or-break typer of question. After some teams gave up and Ibiki saw that there was no need to go further, he announced that those in the room had passed. As he said that, the room went into an uproar, prompting Ibiki to explain the nature of the exam. As he finished his explanation, a black ball smashed through the window and in came a person. "The sexy and single-second Proctor Anko Mitarashi is here," said a woman with purple hair pulled into a fan ponytail. She was dressed in a mesh armor bodysuit, an orange skirt with a beige trench coat over it. She told the genin in the room to go training ground 44 in an hour, and anyone not there at the time would be disqualified. She then left the room. The Chunin hopefuls left the room in a hurry to get to the location, while Ibiki went around collecting the exam papers. As he got to Naruto's paper, he saw a message that caused his eyes to go cold. The message read, "Kabuto Yakushi is a spy." He immediately left to relay it to the Hokage, who assigned an Anbu team to follow him, as he knew that Naruto would not joke around on such matters and that he could examine people carefully. As Team 7 got to the location, they saw a forest with huge trees behind a chain link fence and a locked gate with warning signs handing on it. "Welcome to the Forest of Death. This will be the area for the second round of the exams. It will be a survival exercise. You will have 5 days to get to the tower in the middle of the forest with these 2 scrolls, 1 heaven and 1 earth," said Anko, as she pulled out 2 scrolls with the kanji on them for heaven and earth. "Killing is allowed in the forest, and you must have both scrolls when you get to the tower or you are disqualified. Each team will be given 1 scroll, either a heaven scroll or an earth scroll. You must also arrive with all of your teammates alive at the tower to pass this round. Next you need to sign these papers," continued Anko as she passed around the papers. One genin asked what the papers were for, to which Anko replied that they were consent forms which gives Konoha a release if you die in the forest. "What about food?" asked Choji. Anko replied, "There is a lot of food in the forest, so you can hunt and gather your own food." She then directed them to a tent to get the scrolls. Team 7 received an earth scroll which Sasuke said that he will keep since he was the strongest, while Sakura agreed with him. Naruto gave no argument about it since it was not worth it. Soon all the teams gathered at their respective gates before Anko announced that the exams had now begun. Before all the gates opened and teams rushed in. They went a little way in before Naruto stopped them and said that they should make a plan as how they should go about their time in this forest. He suggested that they set traps and ambush a team near to the tower. "And who made you the leader?" questioned Sasuke arrogantly, causing Naruto to sigh. Looking at him, Naruto asked if he had a better idea. Sasuke then smirked and said that they should find a team, attack them, take their scroll before going to the tower. Sakura agreed, saying that this plan was flawless. Seeing that they would not listen to him, Naruto decided to go along with the plan made by Sasuke, albeit reluctantly. They surveyed the forest, and Naruto sensed a team close by as they stood up. They hid in a tree and watched them in the clearing. They were a team from a Megakure. As Naruto was planning out his move, Sasuke rushed in and engaged them into jutsu. Sakura put the other one in a genjutsu and used a poison senbon to knock him out, while Naruto appeared behind the last one and knocked him out with some lightning chakra on the nape of his neck. Sasuke then burned his opponent with a fireball jutsu, and they searched for the scroll, only finding an earth scroll, disappointing them. Naruto took the scroll and pocketed it. Suddenly, a gust of wind blew into the clearing and sent Naruto flying away, while Akusa Kunoichi appeared to engage Sasuke and Sakura. But Naruto crashed into a tree, stunning him momentarily. He shook his head and focused his eyes and saw that he was carried away a distance. He deduced that it was a fairly high-powered wind jutsu, and whoever did it was no mere genin. A snake then appeared behind him and tried to eat him. He avoided the initial lunge and moved to the side, but the snake kept on trying to swallow him. Naruto dodged around with his superior speed and was determined to end it. He made a hand seal and called out Shadow Clone Jutsu. As 4 clones appeared, they immediately moved into a square formation and did unusual hand seals. They shouted Uzumaki Fuinjutsu. 4-sided paralysis. Anji appeared and froze the snake in place, while the original Naruto made the tiger hand sign and called out Fire Style. Great Fireball Jutsu and let out a huge white fireball at the snake, which charted as an explosion rocked the field. The smoke cleared, leaving a crater and a cooked snake in it, which poofed out of existence. This alerted Naruto as his eyes widened in realization. That was a summon. There are only 2 summoners for snakes in the elemental nations. One is that proctor of this part of the exam, and she has no reason to interfere like this. The other summoner is, thought Naruto as his breath hitched and his eyes widened even more as he knew who sent the snake now. He had no doubt in mind that the person who used that massive wind jutsu was the same person who summoned the snake. He immediately stretched out his sensory abilities and felt a strong individual at his team's location. He had no illusions of their inability to defeat this opponent, and he stood up, released his restrictions and dashed towards them. As he moved, he wondered what could the person want with him, but couldn't reflect or dwell on that thought. But Sasuke and Sakura. As Naruto was blown away, a creepy Kunoichi came up and asked if they needed a heaven scroll, as Sasuke smirked at seeing the scroll. But, she swallowed the scroll and exclaimed that they shall do battle for it with their lives, as she released her killing intent on the 2 genin. Sasuke and Sakura saw visions of their deaths from the intent, and they realized that it was worse than that time against Zabuza. Sasuke stabbed his leg to get rid of the feeling and attacked with some shurikens, which was dodged as the female in front of them just stood up and laughed at them. This was what Naruto came up to see. As Naruto appeared on the tree branch adjacent to them, the Kunoichi looked at him and said, "How nice of you to join us, Kuku." Naruto cursed under his breath as he had lost the element of surprise, so he jumped down. He looked at his teammates and saw the fear in their eyes before turning to their foe. "Why are you here, Orochimaru?" questioned Naruto in hopes of buying time to formulate a strategy. The lady just laughed and replied, "Quite sharp, aren't you, Naruto-kun? Well, I expected no less from Minato and Kushina's son Kukuku." Naruto's eyes widened as he heard the names of his parents, while Sasuke and Sakura were too scared to realize what was just said. "Well, now that the introductions are over with, let's move along with the show and let us see what you have to offer, Naruto-kun. I want to see what that man's son is capable of in battle. Then I will move on to our dear Sasuke-kun," said Orochimaru as he attacked Naruto. Naruto saw the strike with his Sharingan and blocked his fist. He retaliated with a kick to the ribs, but was blocked by the snake Sannin, who kicked his head and sent him flying. Naruto rolled and landed on his feet and took a step back as he ducked under a kick and sent an uppercut to Orochimaru. They keep engaging into jutsu with a flurry of kicks and punches that were either avoided or blocked by each other. Meanwhile, Sakura silently came up to the side of a mesmerized and angry Sasuke, who was watching the fight with both awe and shock at the skill level of Naruto. "Sasuke-kun, let's run away while Naruto Baka keeps him distracted. Even if he dies, no one would care for a clanless, orphan loser anyways," she whispered to him, and he nodded as they both silently left the clearing. By this time, Naruto was beginning to get overwhelmed as Orochimaru had a lot more experience than him, and he knew that he was being toyed with. "Sasuke, get over here and give me a hand, I cannot defeat him on my own," yelled Naruto, but was confused since no reply or help came for a few moments. "Sasuke. Sakura." He yelled and felt that they were not in the clearing any longer. Anger bubbled within him. Those bastards used him as a distraction and left him at the mercy of an S-rank criminal while they ran to save their own asses. At the sight of this, Orochimaru chuckled silently. "Fukuku, seems like the mighty Uchiha has fallen. Is this what the heir of that clan has fallen to? Such a shame." Chuckled the snake Sannin as Naruto decided to kick it up a notch. He threw 7 shurikens at his foe who sidestepped it but realized too late that there was wire attached to them. He saw Naruto manipulate the wires with his mouth and fingers at the same time. His eyes widened at that as he was now trapped against the tree with the wires infused with Naruto's chakra. Naruto then went through 2 hand seals and used fire style Dragon Flame Jutsu. He pumped a large amount of chakra into the attack as white flames ran down the wires and burned the trees and some trees behind it as well. He gasped and smirked but then saw Orochimaru's body dissolve into mud before he was struck in his solar plexus and Orochimaru kicked him into a tree after pumping some corrupted chakra into his forehead. That was the Sharingan triple windmill attack, no doubt about it. So Minato had this little secret stashed away, that sly dog, thought Orochimaru as he looked over to his opponent and saw his eyes had a fully mature Sharingan in each eye, now visible with the seal broken. Fukuku Ara such mastery over the Sharingan at such a young age, and to use that man's technique combo so efficiently. "You amuse me, Naruto-kun," said Orochimaru as he chuckled, and Naruto's eyes widened and coughed up some blood. He realized that the seal must have broken during the fight. He was brought out of his musings as Orochimaru spoke again. "After that majorly disappointing display of young Sasuke-kun, perhaps I should visit Izumi-chan. I heard she was quite the prodigy and have heard that you two were quite close. I didn't want her as she was a girl, but now maybe I should go visit her." Naruto's eyes shadowed his hair. Meanwhile in his mind, the fox woke up at hearing that insult and looked to see what his container was going to do. He knew that it would be ugly even if he didn't win. "How dare you?" whispered Naruto as Orochimaru raised his head to listen to what was being said. "How dare you speak Izumi-chan's name from your mouth? You threaten her in front of me, I will show you the true power of the Sharingan," shouted Naruto in rage as he looked up with a furious expression as the fox grinned from behind his cage. "Now that disgusting snake is in for it." Naruto released a huge pulse of chakra that was felt throughout the forest as Orochimaru was forced to cover his eyes. When he reopened them, he saw Naruto staring at him, now unconsciously channeling lightning chakra as sparks flew around him in an erratic motion. What up the intimidation factor were his eyes as the Tomo in them were spinning wildly while it seemed to burn at the snake's very soul. Yes, this is the power of his Uchiha blood, Kukikuku, thought Orochimaru as he looked into those eyes. Naruto suddenly appeared in front of the Sannin and hit him with a chakra-powered fist as a sickening crunch was heard indicating a broken nose. He was sent flying as Naruto then appeared behind him and kicked him upwards, where he moved above the Rouge Nin and smashed his fists down onto his stomach, sending him plummeting to the ground below. As he was about to make contact with the ground, he was hit with an axe kick from the enraged Reed, creating a crater on the ground. Orochimaru was shocked at how Naruto was keeping up with him, but then he understood that the combination of his Sharingan, heightened reflexes from the lightning chakra coursing over his body and sensory abilities allowed him to keep up with the Sannin at his speed. Very engaged in a battle of Taijutsu when Orochimaru pulled a sword from his mouth and stabbed Naruto through his heart, but he disappeared in smoke before the Sannin was then wrapped up once more in wires and tied to a tree, but this time the wires were laced with lightning chakra and he was unable to substitute himself out. Naruto made some hand seals and used the Dragon Flame Jutsu once again. Naruto dropped to his knees as his Sharingan deactivated from chakra depletion as he heard a chuckling sound coming from his foe. Looking up, he stared in horror as a burning Orochimaru opened his mouth and another Orochimaru exited. "Fukuku, yes, you are a true inheritor of the Sharingan and his son. You will be perfect. To be able to push me this far to use this jutsu is a feat in itself. Allow me to reward you with a gift," said Orochimaru as he formed a hand sign and his neck extended and bit into Naruto's neck, causing Naruto to scream out in pain as he felt his body burning from the inside. Orochimaru placed a heaven scroll into Naruto's pocket as he left, but not before telling him to survive and pass these exams. Shikamaru and his team entered the clearing after feeling the chakra pulse and saw Naruto squirming while holding his neck. As he was about to go help, Ino placed a hand onto his shoulder and he looked at her annoyed. "What if it is a trap?" questioned the blonde, and the Nara swatted her hand away. "Naruto doesn't use such cheap tricks. I know him quite well. He is a friend and is currently hurt and in pain with nobody to help. Now will you stand in my way?" he said, glaring at his teammate as Ino pulled away, never seeing the side of her usually laid-back, lazy teammate. They went out and looked at his condition and they saw that he had a mark on his neck that was pulsing as Naruto whimpered in pain. As they were about to pick him up, an Anbu came into the clearing and ordered them to stand aside. They obliged and looked on as the Anbu took his head and placed it onto her lap and removed her mask. "Naruto-kun, it's okay, I'm here now," a melodious voice sounded, and Naruto looked up and stared as Izumi ran her fingers through his hair, and his whimpering and writhing ceased. She placed her fingers on his neck and kissed his forehead as he went unconscious, and she tended to his wounds. She had felt the pulse of chakra while patrolling along with another strong presence next to him and immediately ran to him. Team 10 just gazed dumbfounded at the sight before their eyes, but kept their mouths closed as one thought kept running through Shikamaru's mind. What happened to Naruto and where is his team? The next day. It was the day after Naruto's tangle with the Rouge Sannin in the Forest of Death. He was brought in the previous day by Izumi, who wasted no time in alerting the Hokage of the situation. As soon as the Hokage heard of his condition, he came immediately. He paled drastically as he noticed the mark on his neck. He swiftly ordered to see the footage from the Forest of Death. They all watched as Naruto fought off the snake summons and his team leaving him behind and his battle with the Sannin. They saw how enraged he was at the mention of Izumi and saw how he pushed Orochimaru to the limit and finally the moment when Orochimaru gave him the cursed seal. As the scream of pain echoed from the tapes, Izumi shed a tear while Hiruzen looked down in shame. This was his fault because of his soft-heartedness towards his student. His surrogate grandson now lay here in suffering. "We should kill him now before he becomes a slave to Orochimaru and put him out of his misery," spoke Anko in a cold tone before she was grabbed by the neck and pushed into the well by Izumi. Glaring at her with her Sharingan active, Izumi spoke in a cold frigid tone, "Say another thing like that and you won't have that tongue of yours anymore." "Enough," roared the Hokage as Izumi released Anko in favor of sitting next to Naruto and running her fingers through his hair. Hiruzen chuckled at that when an Anbu squad entered the room. They reported that Sasuke and Sakura had just been brought to the tower and that Sasuke had been marked. They also reported that when they found him, Sasuke had used the power of the seal willingly. Nodding to the team and dismissing them, Sarutobi asked Izumi and Anko to accompany him. Reluctantly, Izumi left Naruto's side to go with the Hokage. They arrived at the entrance to one of the tower rooms and saw Sasuke and Sakura sitting on the beds. Sakura saw them and stood up and bowed while Sasuke just remained seated. A short time after, Kakashi appeared to greet his team but was surprised to see Anko, the Hokage and Izumi already there. "Sakura, Sasuke, do you know where Naruto is?" asked the aged leader as he noticed Sasuke averted his eyes while Sakura spoke up. "No, Hokage-sama, that baka left us in the middle of a fight while Sasuke-kun saved me." She wanted to inform the Hokage before Naruto came. Sasuke said nothing and kept his eyes glued to the adjacent window while Kakashi was shocked that Naruto would do this. He knew that he was not one to abandon his comrades. Izumi was close to attacking the pink-haired girl, but a look from Hiruzen stopped her. "I can't believe Naruto would do this, I don't know what to say," said the Team 7 sensei as he looked down, but the Hokage looked at him and said, "You shouldn't, Kakashi, because Naruto didn't abandon them. In fact, it was the other way around." Surprised by this fact, Kakashi spun and stared at Sakura while Izumi glared at her, causing her to begin to sweat. "Do you know who they left him at the mercy of, Kakashi?" questioned the Sandaime. Kakashi looked to the third and responded negatively but noticed that Izumi clenched her fists. The Sandaime continued, "They left him at the mercy of Orochimaru, the Snake Sannin, after he tried to find a way for them to all survive and escape together." The usually laid-back Jounin widened his eye and spun around, directing some killing intent towards his student. "Is this true?" he asked as Sakura became squirmish as paled. Slap. Kakashi hit her on the face and turned to Sasuke and repeated his question. Sasuke nodded and Kakashi turned to the Hokage and went down on his knees and said, "I have failed as a sensei, Hokage-sama. I hereby disband Team 7 effective immediately and report Genin Haruno and Genin Uchiha are unfit to be a part of the shinobi corps of Konoha. Can you tell me where my only student is and what his condition is?" Sasuke was enraged by this point and spoke up, "You cannot do this to me. I am an Uchiha. An elite." Slap. Another slap was heard as Izumi delivered it to Sasuke and glared at him with her Sharingan active. She then spoke in a cold tone, "You are a disgrace to the Uchiha name. The Uchiha are not cowards who abandon comrades, we are warriors who stand and fight no matter the odds. It is even more disgusting and shameful to say that you are my brother. You should have seen Naruto-kun, at least he fought knowing that he could not win and still gave his opponent a run for his money. I hereby use my rights as heiress to the Uchiha clan and the clan seat on the council and do hereby strip you of the clan name and remove your rights as an Uchiha." Tears ran down her eyes as she spoke those words as both Sasuke and Sakura were stunned. Hiruzen looked on before speaking, "Your request as the Uchiha clan heiress has been noted and approved effective immediately." Izumi nodded to him and left to return to Naruto with Kakashi in tow. Both of your punishments will be finalized after the exams in front of the council, but for now, you are suspended indefinitely effective immediately, spoke the Hokage before leaving them along with Anko. Sasuke boiled in rage. Everything he had worked for, gone. His ninja status, his clan name, his Hideate and even the resources that he was accustomed to. All gone. Orochimaru was right, he was being held back by this village. He would make sure that Izumi pays for her actions today. As Kakashi entered the room, he saw Naruto lying on the bed with machinery attached to him, and he sighed in sadness. The Hokage informed him of his student's match with the Rouge Sannin, and Kakashi felt immense pride well up inside. He told Kakashi and Anko that knowledge of Naruto's Sharingan was an S-class secret and punishable by death, and they both nodded. Izumi was also surprised and impressed by his skill with the Sharingan, but was hurt that he kept such a thing from her. Inside Naruto's mindscape. "Boy brat, wake up," said the fox as Naruto woke to see that he was inside of his mindscape, which was littered with snakes. Looking at the fox, he asked what happened. The fox informed him that Orochimaru gave him a cursed seal which had his soul infused to make Naruto a slave to him. He told him that the soul was already destroyed, but it would take some time to remove the remaining influence. "Then you can remove it?" questioned Naruto. "Of course I can remove it. Who do you think I am? I am the Kyuubi no Kitsune, the lord of all Biju. No one will control my container except me," said the Kitsune in a prideful tone as he continued to squash the snakes invading what he dubbed his space. Naruto sweat dropped at this and thanked the fox who said not to thank him. Naruto was also told that he would not be able to use his Sharingan or chakra for a week until he removes the influence completely, or else the seal would corrupt and take over his mind. "I see. Well, thanks anyways, Kyuubi. This is a problem, but I would be able to handle it," said Naruto as he turned to leave the mindscape before he heard the fox spoke again. "Kurama. Said the fox as Naruto looked at him confused. "My name is Kurama, not Kyuubi, and you are not to tell anyone else my name or I will rip you to shreds." "You're real softy, aren't you, Kurama?" asked Naruto with a cheeky grin. "Come over here and say that again so I can rip you to shreds," roared Kurama. "Love you too," said Naruto as he disappeared from his mind. Kurama laid down and placed his head on his paws and smirked as he thought, "Damn brat." Outside the mindscape. Naruto opened his eyes and groaned in pain. He was covered in bandages and his neck hurt where that pedophile bit him. He attempted to move but felt a weight on his chest and had an idea as to the identity as he remembered seeing her before going unconscious. Looking down, he was greeted by the familiar sight of silky raven locks. He ran his fingers through his chest and she snuggled into him and he chuckled. The vibrations caused to awake and she looked up and stared into the sapphire eyes of Naruto. She widened her eyes as she gazed at him. Looking at her, Naruto knew what was coming, but before he could stop her, she glomped him with his head between her breasts in an iron grip as he twisted and gasped for air. "Naruto-kun, you're awake," said Izumi as Naruto raised an eyebrow at the affectionate suffix and saw that she had a faint blush on her visage when she realized what she said. As he saw that, he grinned. "Hi Izumi-chan," he said, and her blush deepened as her face went pink and she began to play with a blanket as he laughed at her embarrassment. She bonked him on his head and giggled at his mock scowl as he rubbed the spot. She was surprised though when he reached over and wrapped his arms around her and held her close. Nonetheless, she melted into his embrace. He was afraid of not seeing her again, and so, he squeezed her close as Izumi looked at him, feeling something was wrong. "What's wrong?" she inquired softly, but he averted his gaze. Gently, she cupped his face and turned his head so that he could see her eyes. She became concerned when she saw a tear slip out from his eye, but before she could comment on it, he spoke. "I'm sorry." She tilted her head at this. What was he sorrowful for? "I have kept some things from you because I was afraid of what you may think of me, but with my latest brush with death, I want to tell you everything. You have my full trust and are the only one I can trust to tell my secrets to. If you come to hate me after this, I'll understand, but this is something I have to get off my chest," said Naruto as Izumi said nothing as she knew there was nothing that could cause her to hate him. Taking a breath to calm his nerves, Naruto looked her in the eye and began his tale. "I have the Kyuubi no Kitsune sealed in me. On the night of the Kyuubi attack, the Kyuubi was sealed into a newborn not killed as we were told. That newborn baby was me." At this Naruto lifted his shirt and channeled some chakra to show the seal. Izumi said nothing and just listened with a stoic expression. Seeing this, Naruto continued, "The Yondaime Hokage was an honorable man and he could not ask someone to do something that he could not do. Because of this, he sealed the Kitsune into his own son. What not many people are aware of, however, is the identity of my grandfather. My grandfather was one of the founders of Konoha and its greatest traitor to date. Yes, my grandfather is none other than Madara Uchiha, who did not die at the Valley of the End, but rather met my grandmother and had my father who came here and later got married. My mother's name was Kushina Uzumaki. I believe that your mother knew mine and were the best of friends." After informing her of a couple more things, he looked away from her and turned his face when she raised her hands as if expecting a slap. She put a hand on his cheek and turned his face to meet hers and then spoke, "Do you really think that I would hate you after knowing this? I still am hurt that you would think that. I don't care who you are related to or what you have inside you. To me you are still Naruto, my Naruto," finished Izumi as she affectionately rubbed his cheek. He was stunned. She just accepted it. She accepted him. She didn't question anything. She didn't care and she did not think twice. So he did the only thing his heart was telling him to do and moved on instinct. Closing his eyes, he moved forward and captured her lips in a kiss. Momentarily stunned by his actions, Izumi soon wrapped her arms around his neck and returned the kiss fervorously. Naruto felt joy build up as his heart soared. He deepened the kiss and licked her lip to ask for entrance, which she granted as their tongues danced and massaged each other. They continued their make-out session for a while longer, with Naruto playing with her raven locks while Izumi played with his hair, before separating with a trail of saliva between them as Naruto breathed heavily and Izumi went red. She was caught off guard though as he pulled her over and had her straddle him and recapture her lips in another kiss. Naruto was in heaven at her soft lips, she tasted like vanilla. Izumi was in a similar state of mind. Their action continued for a further 10 minutes before they broke away gasping. They looked away from each other as Naruto just held her there and she returned the gesture. She was confused when he suddenly released her, but what he said made her heart leap out. "Izumi-chan, would you be my girlfriend?" asked Naruto with a fond look in his eye. Izumi's eyes mirrored that and she replied that she would love to be his girlfriend. They embraced each other again as tears fell from Izumi's eyes before she said, "Sleep Naru-kun, you need the rest. Good night." She then fell asleep herself right next to him in his arms after pulling the blanket over them and had a soft smile on her face. Our infirmary inside Forest of Death. Sunlight poured through the window inside the room where Naruto and Izumi slept peacefully in each other's arms. As the light reached her eyelids, Izumi woke up and saw that she was still in Naruto's arms. She gazed at him lovingly and ran her fingers through his blood-red locks as he snuggled closer into her as she smiled softly. The events of the previous night ran through her mind and she blushed and let out a happy sigh. At this, Naruto awoke and saw her. Her eyes were closed so he leaned over and pecked her lips gently as she opened her eyes, looked at him and brought him into a hug. "Good morning Naru-kun," said Izumi and Naruto blushed at her pet name for him. "Good morning Izu-chan," responded Naruto as she repeated his action on hearing her pet name. They leaned towards each other and shared a kiss but was forced to break apart when they heard a cough behind them. Turning around they were met with the sight of the Sandaime, Kakashi and Anko standing at the door. Anko gave a wide grin while Kakashi giggled perversely and the Hokage wore an amused expression on his face. Embarrassed, Izumi buried her face into Naruto's neck as Kakashi began to recite a paragraph from Icha Icha Paradise, leading to both occupants of the bed going scarlet while the Hokage laughed at their antics. "Well Naruto-kun, sorry to interrupt, but I have to talk to you about that cursed mark my wayward student gave you. Kakashi here will have to seal it up," said Sarutobi. "No need old man," the fox said, and I quote, "I will not let anyone control my container except for me," said Naruto. At this, Hiruzen's eyes widened and Kakashi sighed in relief. Anko was impressed that the fox could remove the seal made by her former sensei. "Are you sure Naruto-kun?" questioned the aged Hokage. Naruto nodded and said that he couldn't use his chakra for a week while the fox removes the remnants of the seal, to which Hiruzen nodded. The Hokage informed him that he would have to participate in the preliminary rounds tomorrow since there were more competitors than necessary. The Hokage then bid him goodbye as Kakashi gave him 2 thumbs up before leaving along with Anko. "You can come out now," whispered Naruto. Izumi just shook her head negatively and mumbled that she was too comfortable, earning a chuckle from Naruto. The two spent the rest of the day in bed passing the time with conversation. The next day. All of the genin who passed the second round were standing in the arena listening to the Hokage's speech. Soon Hei came and took over as he was the third round's proctor. He asked if anyone wanted to give up now and Kabuto and his team raised their hands as the Hokage narrowed his eyes at them. Nodding at them, Hei turned to the rest of the competitors and explained the rules of the third round and that matches would be at random. And I am not going through all the matches except know that Sasuke will be replaced by Lee in the finals. The board flashed through the next set of names as the 2 contestants made their way to the arena. Naruto vs Kiba. As Kiba made his way down he conversed loudly with his Ninken partner, Akamaru. "Yahoo, we got the dope, this will be easy." Up in the stands, Shikamaru muttered, "Troublesome, he underestimates him." This was heard by his teammate Ino, who turned to him with a quizzical expression on her face. As Naruto made his way to the arena, he knew that this would be a tough match as he only could rely on his taijutsu. He released his restriction seals and made his way over, still formulating a strategy for his match. He faced his opponent and waited for the proctor to begin the matchup as Kiba boasted about not having to use Akamaru yet. Hayate then began the match and leapt backwards. As Kiba was about to make the first move, Naruto disappeared from his sights and delivered a right hand to his face, sending him flying back. Naruto was then distracted by Akamaru who attacked him as Kiba lifted his face to show a bloody nose. Kiba then threw a pill to the dog and popped one into his own mouth as well. As Akamaru ate the pill, his skin reddened as Kiba's appearance became more feral and Naruto felt his chakra levels increase. Akamaru jumped on Kiba's head as he yelled out, "Man-Beast Clone Jutsu," and there were now 2 Kibas standing there. They then threw down smoke bombs onto the ground blocking them from sight as Naruto cursed under his breath. He expanded his sensory skill as he closed his eyes in concentration. He then heard Kiba's loud proclamation of Fang over Fang technique and felt 2 signatures closing in as he quickly predicted where they would land. At the last moment, Naruto leapt upwards and delivered an axe kick to one of the cyclones, which turned out to be Akamaru who now slumped to the floor unconscious. At this sight, Kiba's eyes widened and wondered how. At the confused look on his face, Naruto gave no explanation, merely telling Kiba to give up or else and placed a kunai on Akamaru's neck. Scared for the life of his partner, Kiba said, "I give up." Naruto left Akamaru and went back up to the stands. As he made his way past Temari, she gave him a flirtatious wink and smile, and he raised an eyebrow and nodded back with a smile of his own. From her position next to the Hokage, Izumi fumed at their interaction. Naruto approached his sensei as Kurenai wondered just how the class Deadlast defeated an Inyazuka in a pure Taijutsu bout. Kakashi just laughed and informed Naruto that he was proud of him as he went back to reading his smut. Internally though, he knew his student was about to get into trouble as he had noticed his interaction with the sand girl, but said nothing as it would be an amusing sight for him. The matches concluded and the qualifying genin were informed of the final round of matches being held in a month, so they have the time to train for it and that all of the various dignitaries and daimyos would be here to see. They were then told to draw lots for their matches which ended up being like this. First match. Naruto vs Neji. Second match. Kankuro vs Shino. Third match. Temari vs Shikamaru. Fourth match. Gaara vs Rock Lee. As they exited the arena, Naruto spotted Izumi and he called out to her. She turned and looked at him impassively which confused him but shook his head as he asked her if she wanted to go out with him tomorrow night on a date. She gazed at him and replied in an icy tone, "Why do you want to go out with me? Go with that sand girl you were flirting with earlier. I hate you." She then turned and began to walk away expecting him to stop her and give an explanation. It wasn't that she was mad, she was just jealous and wanted to tease him slightly. As no sound came from him, she stopped and turned around. She was met with the sight of Naruto with his head lowered with his hair covering his eyes and small tears dropping down to the ground and her heart tore in pieces. For Naruto, the only words that replayed in his mind over and over was "I hate you." Hearing these words from Izumi crushed him as he broke down. Izumi saw this and immediately brought him into her arms as he wrapped her arms around her tightly and began to sob softly and whispered in between his sobs. "Please not you too. Please don't hate me," he said as he choked on his sobs. This caused Izumi to widen her eyes and feel like an idiot. He had told her of the village's treatment of him and hearing those words from her mouth must have been something that had completely crushed him. She whispered soothing words into his ear and said that she did not mean what she said and apologized for being so insensitive and gave him a passionate kiss to prove her point. She made a note to remember that he was not as strong as he portrayed to everyone else. Naruto held her like a lifeline for a few moments before releasing her and grabbing her hand as they walked out of the arena. As they left, the shinobi and villagers around looked at them stunned. They were impressed and shocked that the village ice princess was walking with a demon boy. Some people glared in jealousy at Naruto wanting to be in his position. Others wondered what it was that Naruto did to melt the heart of the princess, while there were some whistles and cheers. Of course, most of the reactions were ignored by the couple as they returned to their home. Sakura looked on as they walked and thought to herself, "Hiruin Sasuke-kun's Kuriran hangs out with Izumi-sama. He must be the reason why Izumi-sama was mad at my Sasuke-kun." She marched towards them intent on doing something when she suddenly tripped and fell onto her face. She saw Konohamaru grinning like a lunatic as he said that he was not going to let her ruin the day of his boss and Izumi-nichan. He was waiting for this for a long time now. Izumi and Naruto made it home and cuddled on the couch before falling asleep with each other having a smile on their faces. To be continued. See you all in the next video. Till then, enjoy your life. And spread love to get love in return.